Welcome to the untamed depths of imagination, where we drift into a vision of Earth untouched by human hands. A world where no cities rise, no engines hum, and no lights disturb the endless night skies. Tonight, we'll travel through this alternate history, exploring what our planet might look like if people had never walked its soil. Picture vast forests stretching unbroken from horizon to horizon, their canopies weaving together like emerald seas. Rivers run clear and wild, carving paths through valleys, feeding wetlands alive with the calls of unseen creatures. Mountains remain untouched by quarry or rogue, their peaks sharp against the heavens. And in the silence of this humanless earth, the natural order is shaped not by industry, but by the slow, patient rhythm of evolution. Without us, predators reign without challenge, and prey species flourish or vanish in great cycles of survival. Ancient mammals grow unchecked, birds reclaim the skies, and the oceans remain mysterious, unpolluted kingdoms. Each landscape, from desert to jungle to frozen tundra, tells a story of what Earth might have been if humanity had remained only a dream. So settle in, close your eyes, and let this journey carry you. Together, we'll wander through a planet both familiar and alien, a home that never knew us, yet thrives in its own eternal balance. Imagine lifting your gaze from the bustle of cities and the hum of engines to drift above a world untouched by human hands. Below, vast swaths of forest ripple like dark green oceans, their canopies unbroken by roads or clearings. Rivers unfurl in silver ribbons across the land, carving canyons and depositing silt in fan-shaped deltas that teem with life. In this thought experiment, we step into a realm where human footprints never pressed into soil, where the air carries only the breath of living things, and where Earth's rhythms have unfolded in perfect harmony for millennia. Here, the mantle of time stretches back endlessly, unmarked by millennia of dams, mines, and cities. Mountains rise and fall according to the slow pulse of tectonic plates. No quarries have scarred their slopes. No highways spiral around their peaks. Wind sculpts dunes and desert basins, while monsoon rains sweep across tropical coasts, renewing floodplains and nourishing wetlands. Across every latitude, Earth's landscapes respond to sun and moon, to seasons of light and dark, in a dance undisturbed by concrete or steel. Picture the vast primeval forests that cloak the mid-latitudes. Towering conifers stand shoulder to shoulder with broad-leafed trees, their trunks shrouded in moss and lichen. Ephemeral streams wind through ferns and undergrowth, feeding hidden pools where amphibians bask on sun-warmed stones. Saps drip from bark into leaf litter, attracting insects that in turn nourish songbirds whose calls echo through the hollows. In the absence of logging and agriculture, these forests have endured for eons, their ecosystems balanced by predator and prey, by drought and flood, by fire and regrowth. In the far north and deep south, no footprints mar the tundra and taiga. Arctic willow hugs the ground, its creeping stems buried beneath winter snows. Caribou and musk oxen migrate in great herds across frozen plains, guided by ancient instincts honed over countless generations. In spring, thawed rivers teem with fish, attracting wolves, wolverines, and myriad scavengers who roam under skies so clear that the aurora borealis paints the horizon with shifting veils of color. In this world, no pipelines cross frozen marshes, no seismic surveys shake the permafrost nature's tapestry remains intact. When day breaks in the equatorial belt, sunlight pours through humid air, igniting the forest canopy in a blaze of green. Orchids cling to branches, their blossoms concealed beneath broad leaves. Army ants march in living columns, uprooting leaf litter in pursuit of prey, while flickers and trogons dart overhead, their plumage bright against emerald leaves. In the understory, tapirs pad softly through the damp soil, and poison dart frogs flash brilliant hues as a warning to potential predators. Here, instead of fragmented reserves, the The forest stretches unbroken for hundreds of kilometers, forming a sanctuary for creatures that have never known human encroachment. Rivers in this untouched realm flow freely from mountain headwaters to the sea. In steep canyons, they crash over falls, carving gorges lined with ferns and moss. Further downstream, they meander through floodplains, shifting course with each seasonal high water. Fish spawn in gravel beds washed clean by unregulated currents, and river otters hunt in shallows with playful abandon. Nutrient-rich silt fans out at the mouth, creating estuaries alive with mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrass beds. No dams disrupt the pulse of water. Every tributary sings its own song, joining the chorus of rivers that sustain life on land and sea. Turn your gaze to the world's oceans, where the absence of plastic and chemical runoff reveals a clarity seldom seen today. Coral reefs burst with color pinks, purples, and golds woven into structures built by generations of coral polyps and algae. Shoals of parrotfish, surgeonfish, and butterflyfish weave through the corals, grazing on algae and polyp tentacles. Larger predators reef sharks, groupers, and moray eels patrol shadowy caverns, maintaining the balance of reef communities. No overfishing has thinned their ranks. No toxic runoff has bleached their colors. The reefs thrive in a continuum of growth and renewal. Further offshore, migratory whales journey along ancient routes, guided by cetacean songs carried over thousands of kilometers. Pods of orca follow shoals of salmon migrating upriver, their speed and coordination unmatched by any human technology. Dolphins surf the bow waves of ocean currents, hunting squid at night under moonlit seas. Beneath them, vast schools of herring and anchovy pulse in synchrony, evading seabirds that dive like torpedoes. In these open waters, no oil rigs dot the horizon, no shipping lanes churn the surface, just endless blue, teeming with life. Across grasslands shaped by wind and rain, herds of ungulates roam in synchrony with grass growth. Wildebeest and zebra follow the rains in sweeping migrations, crossing rivers in vast columns that reshape landscapes with each hoofbeat. Predators, lions, cheetahs, and hyenas tail their prey in an age-old contest of speed and stealth. Scavengers, vultures, marabou storks, and jackals clean up the remains, returning nutrients to the soil. In this world, no farmland interrupts the grasslands. No fences impede the migrations. The plains exist as open highways of life. Mountains rising from these plains host ecosystems that change with every few hundred meters of elevation. In foothills, oak and maple form mixed woodlands. Higher up, fir and spruce dominate. Near the summits, alpine meadows burst with wildflowers in spring. Snowmelt feeds glacial lakes whose turquoise waters sparkle in the sun. Mountain goats and ibex scale cliffs to graze on sparse vegetation, while eagles ride thermal updrafts overhead. No ski resorts scar the slopes, no roads carve switchbacks, only wild terrain sculpted by gravity and glacier. Even in the driest deserts, where sand dunes shift like ocean waves, life persists in niches crafted by ancient rains. Desert oases host palm groves that shade pools of cool water, while small mammals and reptiles emerge after rare storms to breed and feed. In mountain ranges that rise from sandy basins, cloud forests capture moisture from passing winds, creating verdant pockets amid arid plains. With no wells to draw groundwater and no roads to disturb fragile crusts, these deserts retain their subtle rhythms of drought and bloom, of sleep and sudden vitality. Skies spanning this unfettered earth remain untroubled by pollution. From mountaintop observatories to remote islands, starlight glitters without interference from artificial illumination. The Milky Way sweeps across the heavens in a luminous band, and meteor showers streak like celestial rain. No contrails lace the sky. No satellites reflect city lights. Under this vault, nocturnal creatures venture out. Owls hunt in silent forests. Bats flit among flowering trees. The call of nightjars drifts over the savanna. In darkness, nature's spectacles unfold unhindered. In the absence of human agricultural practices, soils evolve through natural processes of erosion, deposition, and organic matter accumulation. Forest floors carpeted with decaying leaves and deadwood teem with fungi, earthworms, and microbes that release nutrients back into the earth. Grasslands host root networks that sequester carbon deep underground, stabilizing soils and feeding subterranean communities. No fertilizers leach into waterways. No heavy machinery compacts the earth. The substrate beneath every ecosystem remains alive, rich, and self-renewing. Volcanoes, too, play their part unimpeded. On volcanic islands and continental rifts, lava builds new land, enriching soils with minerals. In the wake of eruptions, pioneer species, lichens and mosses, colonize bare rock, paving the way for shrubs and trees to take root. Soils form over centuries, and ecosystems rebound in successions of green. In this world, humans do not plant crops on newly formed lava fields. Rather, nature orchestrates its own renewal, each eruption part of an endless cycle of death and rebirth. Seasons flow uninterrupted. Spring brings blossoms and migrations. Summer bursts with growth. Autumn paints leaves in fiery hues before they drift to the ground. Winter stills life with frost and snow. Each cycle writes its own chapter on landscapes. Rings in tree trunks, layers in lake sediments, footprints in mud that wash away in spring floods. Ecological communities ebb and flow in time-honored patterns, guided by sun angles and temperature gradients, by rainfall and hours of daylight. No irrigation canals alter flood pulses. No greenhouses buffer plants from cold seasonal change reigns supreme. Life's tapestry in this world would be richer and more intricate than we can fully imagine. Species that we lost to hunting, habitat loss, and climate change might still roam or flutter across their ancestral ranges. Tasmanian devils hunt small marsupials in uncut woodlands. Passenger pigeons fill the skies over eastern forests. Giant ground sloths feed on lianas in Central American jungles. Dodos step quietly on the beaches of Mauritius. Niche upon niche is filled by creatures adapted over millions of years to the ebb and flow of a planet left to its own devices. Such a world stands as a mirror to our own, a reminder of the delicate balance between life and landscape, of the impact our species has wrought in mere millennia. In dreaming of an Earth without human hands, we glimpse the possibilities of places left to wildness. Greater biodiversity, deeper soils, clearer skies, and a harmonious rhythm of natural processes. We see what perseverance and interdependence can achieve when free from disruption. Ecosystems woven tightly through predator-prey dynamics, pollinator networks, nutrient cycles, and seasonal migrations. Yet even as we imagine this pristine Earth, we carry with us the understanding that no single place remains untouched. Human footprints reach every corner of the globe, from plastic in ocean gyres to radioactive isotopes in Arctic snow. In our own era, we hold a choice: to restore, to protect, to conserve, or to continue altering the world so profoundly that future generations can scarcely recognize the living planet we inherited. The thought experiment of an Earth without humans underscores both our power to damage and our capacity for stewardship. As the sun sets on this vision of an unspoiled world, we return to the present, carrying memories of rainforests unbroken by roads, of rivers unfettered by dams, of oceans alive and clear. We remember skies untainted by smog, soils rich in organic life, and creatures big and small thriving in every niche. In that recollection lies inspiration, to tread more lightly, to protect the wild places that remain, and to nurture recovery where we can. For though we cannot vanish like a whisper from Earth's history, we can honor the timeless rhythms of nature, and strive to harmonize with the planet's enduring song. As dawn breaks over a planet untroubled by human presence, Earth awakens in a world unrecognizable to us now, where every living pulse predates our species, where life's earliest whispers echo through stone and sea. Beneath an inky sky untouched by contrails or city lights, the first seas swirled with heat and chemistry. Volcanic islands, fresh from the planet's molten heart, jutted above steamy oceans, their black basalt slopes hissing with escaping steam. Into those acidic tides and saline shallows, life bared its first steps, carried on the backs of molecules dancing in chemical soup. In the shadow of cooling lava flows, warm mineral pools bubbled with potential. Tiny clumps of molecules, nucleic acids, amino acids, assembled into self-replicating chains. In that restless broth, selection began. The simplest entities that copied themselves best survived. With time measured in unfathomable millennia, membranes formed, wrapping nutrients in phospholipid bubbles that became the first cells. Their descendants, the earliest bacteria, drifted through warm seas, feasting on volcanic compounds and sunlight's distant glow. As these single-celled pioneers thrived, they clustered on sunlit rocks in coastal shallows. Their sticky secretions bound grains of sand, creating gelatinous mats that trapped sediments. Layer by layer, these microbial carpets built stromatolites' living pillars reaching for the sky. In calm bays and lagoons, stromatolites rose as stone towers, their concentric rings marking eons of microbial toil. Even today, their fossilized forms stand as silent monuments to life's humble beginnings. But it was the cyanobacteria blue-green algae that changed everything. They learned to harness sunlight and split water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. At first, that oxygen vanished into iron-rich seas, rusting sediments red. Then, as iron deposits filled, oxygen began to accumulate in the water, and finally in the atmosphere. The sky deepened into sapphire blue, and the air carried the promise of a world that could breathe. That promise came at a cost. Oxygen, toxic to many anaerobic microbes, spurred extinction waves among the earliest inhabitants. Yet those that adapted gained a powerful advantage, the ability to burn fuels with oxygen, extracting far more energy than fermentation allowed. Slowly, complex molecules of life could be supported larger cells, internal membranes, the first eukaryotes. In their depths, nuclei formed, housing genetic blueprints in protective sanctuaries. As Earth's atmosphere thickened with oxygen, climates began to shift. Snowball Earth episodes gripped the globe, ice expanding toward the equator in shimmering sheets. The planet's albedo rose, reflecting sunlight and plunging temperatures. Life retreated into equatorial refuges, warm, salty seas where heat from submarine vents kept waters liquid. Here, microbial pioneers clung to survival, protected by layers of ice above and warm rock below. Then, as mysteriously as it began, the snow receded. Glacial waters surged in cataclysmic floods, carving valleys and redistributing sediments. Land that had lain locked beneath ice emerged to daylight. In the aftermath, nutrient-rich waters fueled unprecedented blooms of life. In the Cambrian dawn, evolutionary fireworks ignited. The seafloor exploded with brand new forms. Trilobites, their bodies armored in jointed plates, skittered across silty bottoms. Their legs churned sediment, creating rippled patterns later fossilized in limestone. Anomalocaris, a formidable predator, swept its grasping appendages through soft-bodied prey. Sponges, brachiopods, and echinoderms built the first reef's complex habitats teeming with life. Each surge of diversity etched its mark in the stratigraphic record, a testament to nature's inventiveness. With complexity came ecological theaters of predator and prey. Hard parts shells, spines, jaws appeared like sudden brushstrokes on life's canvas. Food webs grew intricate. Filter feeders sifted plankton. Carnivores snapped up forms. Scavengers recycled the dead. In this Cambrian chorus, evolutionary experimentation reached a crescendo. As continents shifted beneath shallow seas, new coastlines were drawn. Tropical shelf regions, bright with sun and nutrients, became the crucible of diversification. In sheltered lagoons, early coral-like organisms formed limy mounds. In deeper waters, nautiloid cephalopods drifted in search of prey, their buoyant shells marking the frontier between survival and demise. Soon after, life began to inch onto land. Microscopic spores, tough, resistant to desiccation, danced on air currents, settling on damp rocks and tidal flats. Simple moss-like and liverwort-like plants took root, forming fragile carpets in intertidal zones. Their rhizoids bound sediments, creating the first soils. Fungi joined them in silent partnership, decomposing organic debris and cycling nutrients. With soils came deeper roots and vascular tissues. Plants evolved to transport water and sugars through specialized conduits, fueling taller growth. By the Devonian, primitive trees, xylophytes, and cladoxylopsids rose above the wetlands like green lighthouses. Their fronds opened to the sun, shading the ground below and moderating temperatures. Forest floors thickened with leaf litter, decaying into rich humus that supported burgeoning communities of detritivores. On land, the first arthropods seized new opportunities. Millipede-like myriapods, armored in chitin, scuttled through moist leaf litter, chewing on decaying vegetation. Spiders and scorpions stalked their prey in the gloom, their venom a novel innovation in the race for food. The first insects fluttered with primitive wings, gliding between dripping fronds and pollinating early plants. Airborne life added a third dimension to ecosystems, linking forests and freshwater in a web of life. In Devonian rivers and lakes, fish continued their mastery of water. Lobe-finned forms, with sturdy fin rays resembling bones, propelled themselves onto tidal flats to gulp air. Their limbs evolved into proto-legs, their shoulders and hips developing joints to support weight. On damp mud, they experimented with walking. In those shallow pools, the first tetrapods, Ichthyostega and Acanthostega, took hesitant steps, their claws marking the muddy banks. Each ancient footprint tells the story of transition, preserved in layers of silt and sandstones. These tracks record tentatives, limbs shifting weight, tails trailing behind, ribs flexing to breathe air. For the first time, vertebrates experienced land's challenges: gravity's pull, dehydration's threat, the need for new sensory systems. Every adaptation was a triumph. Stronger limbs, waterproof skins, kidneys to conserve water, lungs to extract oxygen from thin air. By the Carboniferous, sprawling swamp forests carpeted lowlands. Towering lycopsids shot skyward, their scaly trunks over 30 meters tall. Horsetails formed dense thickets along waterways, and seed ferns spread their tongue-shaped leaves in shaded understories. Insects achieved gigantic proportions. Dragonfly relatives with 2-foot wingspans patrolled the tapestried canopy, their multifaceted eyes scanning for prey. Arthropod breathers exploited abundant atmospheric oxygen, which soared above modern levels. Amphibians ruled the waters and lands of these coal swamps. Labyrinthodonts, massive, flat-skulled creatures, maneuvered through shallow lagoons, their paddle-like limbs suited to both walking and swimming. Smaller temnospondylls darted beneath logs and roots, hunting insect larvae and small fish. In every niche, predator and prey entwined in evolutionary dance. Amphibian larvae grazing on algae, fish snapping at insect hatchlings, early reptiles chasing smaller amphibians on land. It was in these ancient woodlands that the first resilient egg evolved, the amniote egg, encased in membranes and shells that protected embryos from drying out. Amniote pioneers' early synapsids ventured into drier uplands, their metabolic rates rising to support active lifestyles. Their teeth diversified, incisors for cropping, canines for slicing, post-canines for grinding. Their limbs held bodies aloft, freeing them from aquatic dependency. These land pioneers laid the groundwork for every reptile, bird, and mammal to follow. Their descendants experimented with new body sizes, limb proportions, and respiratory systems. In the Mesozoic, dinosaurs would dominate. In the Cenozoic, mammals would rise. But it all began with single-celled architects building stromatolites, with green mats on rock edges, with fish stepping onto mud, with spores drifting on winds. This vision of Earth as dawn of ecosystems ruled purely by natural forces reminds us of life as tenacity and creativity. No human footprints guide these stories, only the laws of chemistry, physics, and biology. Mountains rise and fall, seas expand and contract, climates chill and warm, and life responds in infinite forms. Every layer of rock and every fossilized leaf is a chapter in this grand narrative, a testament to the interplay of chance and necessity that has shaped our world from its earliest moments to the present day. In the hush of this primeval earth, we hear the beating of life's heart, a rhythm unchanged by civilization, echoing through time in the timeless story of our planet. As the first light of dawn filters through an endless curtain of green, the world awakens in an immense cathedral of living wood. No axes have cleaved the trunks of ancient giants, and no human-made fires have blackened the soil. Instead, the air is cool and damp with the breath of leaves, and the forest floor is carpeted in mosses that cushion each step of drifting deer and silent predators alike. Here, you move along winding root paths sculpted by centuries of growth and decay, under a canopy so seamless that sunlight spills through only in dappled pools. The forest song begins softly, drips of dew falling, the hush of ferns unfurling, and a distant rustle as a bird takes wing for its morning hunt. In the equatorial belt, rainforests stretch without interruption, vast realms of biodiversity where every square meter hosts countless forms of life. Towering dipterocarps soar toward the sky, their buttressed bases anchoring them in shallow soils. Epiphytic orchids and ferns drape like emerald lace from sturdy boughs, drawing moisture from mist and rain. At dawn, a symphony of calls rises. The soft coo of pigeons in the emergent layer, the high trills of cicadas in the canopy, the low grunts of primates foraging for fruit. Underneath, tree shrews flit among vines, while iridescent beetles patrol bark in search of sap. In the hush between calls, you sense the pulse of an ecosystem so vast and old that even the passing centuries feel like a single breath. Above, the emergent layer shimmers under soft sunlight. Here, a few well-adapted giants break free of the canopy, their crowns wide and irregular like umbrellas gathering every drop of rain. Raptor-like hornbills wheel between branches, their dramatic casques cutting through the light. Butterflies and wing patterns of sunsets drift lazily on updrafts, while gnarled branches host colonies of leafcutter ants carrying miniature trains of green fragments back to hidden nests below. Every tree is a microcosm. Bromeliads hold pools of water in leaf tanks, offering refuge to frogs the size of fingertips and to mosquito larvae that will feed spiders at night. Descending into the canopy itself, you tread a realm of perpetual twilight. Thick vines coil around trunks like lianas, and every surface is alive with climbing plants seeking sun. Monkeys move in acrobatic silence, hands and tails coiling around branches as they leap from vault to vault. Here, the air is warmer, heavy with the smell of resin and the hum of pollinators. Moths the width of your hand drift beneath broad leaves, their scales shedding like fine dust onto sleeping flowers. Fruit bats wheel through scented corridors at dusk, carrying seeds on tongues that will sprout futures forests won't remember. Below the canopy, the understory holds secrets in its green gloom. Young saplings, magnolias, figs, palm relatives tremble in the faint breeze that finds its way through twig-tangled gaps. Ground-dwelling mammals forage in the leaf litter. Pangolins uncurl from their scales to sample insects, and wild pigs snuffle roots with sensitive snouts. Toads crouch beneath rotting logs, their skin the color of wet earth, ears twitching at the faintest rustle of wings or the gentle splash of a falling raindrop. Light is scarce, but life is abundant, each creature adapted to thrive in half-seen realms of green and shadow. At the forest floor itself, the hush deepens. Here, decomposition reigns supreme. Fallen branches and decaying leaves release nutrients that drip into soft soils, fueling the next generation of growth. Fungus threads mycelia spread like shimmering networks beneath your feet, tying tree roots together in silent communion. Millipedes coil in curled armor, shredding wood into fine particles. Beetles with hardened elytra search for morsels in the damp detritus, while tiny springtails dance on water films like miniature ballet troupes. In such stillness, every step is a disturbance, every breath a wave of sound in a sea of natural hush. What rivers remain free of dams carve intricate lacework through these forests. Rainwater, unimpeded by levees, spills onto floodplains in seasonal pulses, replenishing wetlands that nurture life unseen. In flooded stretches, arapaima glide beneath submerged branches, their scaly backs breaking the water's mirror. Caimans drift among trailing roots, eyes peering at the ripples, while river dolphins weave through shoals of Shirachan fish. On riverbanks, giant otters wrestle in playful hunting, their sleek bodies cutting through water with effortless grace. Seasonal floods sculpt new channels each year, shifting habitats and inviting forests to reclaim abandoned sandbars. Miles away in temperate rainforests, colossal conifers stand sentinel like living cathedrals. Douglas firs and redwoods soar beyond 90 meters, their bark thick with tannins that ward off decay. Moss cascades from limbs in soft green waterfalls, and every fallen log hosts communities of ferns, lichens, and insect larvae. The scent of cedar and spruce fills the air, rich with oil that mists over the forest when rain brushes branches. Elk migrate beneath this canopy, their velvet antlers brushing low branches, while spotted owls perch in hollowed snags, cooing in the hush of twilight. These ancient woodlands, unbroken by clearings, stretch for thousands of kilometers, linking mountain ranges in a seamless refuge. Further north, the taiga thrums with life beneath snow-laden evergreens. Spruce and fir stand in measured ranks, their branches tough against winter's weight. Beneath the needles, a hidden world persists. Lichens hugging bark sustain caribou herds, whose broad hooves traverse snowy plains in epic migrations. Wolves patrol the silent forests, tracking snowshoe hares that leave distinctive foot imprints. In spring's gentle thaw, streams gurgle with runoff, and black bears emerge from dens to feast on new shoots and grubs. No logging roads fracture these stands. Instead, the forests stretch to horizon lines, a living sea of green under shifting auroras. In tropical montane cloud forests, moisture clings to every surface. Moss blankets beech and oak trunks in emerald fuzz, and ferns sway in perpetual mist. Hummingbirds hover at epiphyte blossoms, their rapid wing beats stirring droplets that glint like diamonds in pale light. Sap-sucking insects and their attendant ants form alliances on leaf undersides, while slug-sized snails trail silver ribbons across the wet forest floor. These high-elevation groves, unsullied by plantations, host orchids that bloom in crimson and gold. In the hush between drips, an old mountain stream whispers of glacial origins, winding through root-tangled corridors that no chainsaw has ever breached. Towards equatorial highlands, rainforests rise again in jungles of black soil and volcanic parent rock. Trees here host strangler figs that begin life in canopy cracks, dropping roots that weave into full columns around host trees. Eventually, the fig's hollow bowl replaces its host like a living sculpture. At their bases, tapirs wander nocturnally, snuffling for fallen fruit under faint moonlight. Jaguars crouch in dense tangles, their spots blending into shadows as they stalk peccary herds. In a world without roads, the broad leaves and woven vines form a fortress of green that stretches for tens of kilometers, broken only by the plume of volcanic smoke rising in the distance. Across archipelagos like Borneo and New Guinea, lowland rainforests teem with life unseen elsewhere. Proboscis monkeys drift along river edges, their expressive faces turning to regard the quiet banks. Tree kangaroos rest in forked limbs, their padded tails curled around twisting vines. Hardwood giants ironwood, ebony tower over swarms of ants that farm aphids on new shoots. Forest elephants trace trails through dense undergrowth, shaping seed shadows with every step. In this realm of ancient Gondwanan lineage, palm species and pitcher plants thrive in nutrient-poor soils, forming bizarre and wondrous botanical mysteries. Even in the driest woodlands, Mediterranean oak maple mosaics and Australian eucalyptus forests, life abounds without human harvest. Acacias endure dry seasons with phyllids that shed minimal water. Eucalyptus trees drop volatile oils that deter pests, but ignite only under rare natural conditions. In winter, oaks sprout fresh leaves, and kangaroo herds graze on newly sprouted grasses. In summer's warmth, glossy green leaves shimmer in dry heat, and marsupials retreat to cool hollows. No pastoral fires sweep across these lands. Instead, fire cycles follow natural lightning patterns, creating patchworks that respect every nook and cranny of habitat. In the central plains of Africa, dense Mayambo woodlands stretch beyond sight, their Brachystegia trees interspersed with mopane copses. Elephants and giraffes roam freely, their migrations timed to the subtle cues of flowering and fruiting cycles. Lions and leopards rear cubs in thickets untroubled by roads. Hyenas patrol in moonlit nights. Birds of paradise in New Guinea flaunt plumage and courtship dances beneath towering undergrowth. Each forested realm, though unique in species, shares an unbroken web of connections. Predator to prey, seed to soil, rain to river, leaf to the sun. In all these forests, tropical, temperate, boreal, montane, the absence of human felling has allowed ecological processes to unfold undisturbed. Treefalls create towering gaps where seedlings of multiple species germinate and compete in bursts of growth. Over decades and centuries, canopy gaps cycle through successional stages, ensuring structural complexity that supports a greater diversity of life. No plantations have converted wild woodlands into monocultures. No roads have created edges that degrade interior microclimates. Instead, forests maintain stable core habitats where endangered species find refuge. With no access to carved travel corridors, wildlife corridors remain intact across hundreds of kilometers. Genetic diversity thrives as populations interbreed along natural pathways. Birds naturally navigate from one forest patch to another, maintaining gene flow. Leafcutter ants farm fungus in subterranean chambers, unaware of farmland cleared by human hands. Their fungal gardens nourished by leaves collected from an unbroken circle of trees. The global canopy forms a single green blanket that helps regulate temperatures and moisture distribution worldwide. These vast, unfragmented forests also play a vital role in the planet's water and carbon cycles. Trees thousands of years old store enormous volumes of carbon in living biomass, soil, and wood. Their evapotranspiration cools the air, drawing rainfall inland and maintaining stable climates. Rivers that feed distant regions carry pure water, unpolluted by agricultural runoff or sediment from clear-cut hillsides. Each raindrop that falls on this living skin nourishes a network of rivers that sustain wetlands, rice paddies, and river dolphins far downstream. Such a world, unmarked by deforestation, demonstrates the resilience and complexity of nature left to its own devices. Here, biodiversity peaks in every corner, food webs remain complete, and ecosystems can adapt to natural disturbances, storms, droughts, insect outbreaks, with recovery guided solely by evolutionary legacies, not human intervention. While climate change still unfolds, Forests that span continents provide living buffers, their deep root systems anchoring soils and storing water through variability. When the sun dips below the horizon, the forest's heartbeat slows but does not cease. Nightfall brings its own marvels. Bioluminescent fungi glow on damp logs, owls glide soundlessly among trunks, and tree frogs chorus in polyphonic vibrations. In this nocturnal realm, predators and prey continue age-old rhythms. Fireflies dance in liquid arcs, echoing constellations above. The forest, vast and silent, pulses with soft life, an immersive tapestry woven without human threads. In dreaming of this earth, its forests, without fire or axes, we glimpse the grandeur of a planet where nature writes its own story. We feel the pulse of forests unbroken, stretching beyond memory and prophecy. In that reflection lies both awe and humility. Awe at life's creative abundance, and humility before the forces that shape our shared home. And as you breathe in the imagined scent of fresh rain on untroubled leaves, you join the forest in timeless exhalation, an intimate echo of a world where wilderness reigns supreme. Imagine standing on the deck of a silent ship as dawn's first light brushes the horizon. No fishing nets trail behind. No engines hum below the surface. Instead, the world's oceans stretch before you in unbroken vastness, a boundless blue realm alive with movement and color. From the sunlit epipelagic zone where plankton dances in currents to the twilight depths where strange creatures drift, these seas pulse with life in every fold of wave and current. Here, in the absence of human nets, marine ecosystems unfold in their fullest expression, free, dynamic, and teeming beyond imagination. Beneath the surface, sunlight splinters into beams that pierce the water's crystal clarity. Tiny phytoplankton microscopic architects of the ocean's food web harness the sun's energy, converting carbon dioxide and nutrients into living matter. These minute organisms bloom in shimmering swirls, visible from above as emerald patches against cobalt waters. Zooplankton gather to graze, their delicate bodies drifting on eddies. Fish fry and juvenile creatures find refuge among these drifting fields of green, feeding and growing in a world untroubled by trawl nets that would otherwise sweep them away. From these humble beginnings arise the great migrations of life. Schools of sardines, anchovies, and herring move in undulating columns so dense they darken the water. Larger predators, 100 tuna blades, slicing through the shoal hone, their hunting skills in coordinated strikes that scatter the mass into glittering fragments. No nets intrude upon their schools, so each creature's role in this dance remains vital. Predator and prey, locked in a delicate balance that sustains the endless cycles of life and death in the open ocean. Above those migrating shoals, cetaceans patrol the waves. Blue whales, the largest animals to have ever lived, glide in silent procession. Mouths agape to filter vast volumes of krill. Their deep, resonant calls ripple through water hundreds of miles away, a language of song that unites individuals across ocean basins. Humpbacks breach in joyous arcs, their bodies glistening like wet stone, before crashing back into the sea, sending tremors across the surface. In this oceanic sanctuary, their migratory routes span poles and tropics alike, unimpeded by shipping lanes or ghost nets that ensnare in our modern world. In quieter coves and coastal shallows, dolphins weave between breaks of light. Their acrobatic leaps and synchronized splashes are both play and precision hunting. Bottlenose pods herd schools of mullet or small snapper toward shallow bars, where they corral prey into tight groups and take turns diving in for captures. Their laughter-like clicks resonate against rock faces, guiding sonar beams to track shifting prey under floating mats of sargassum and seaweed. Turn your gaze to the coral reefs, those living cathedrals of calcium carbonate. Here, in riotous profusion, hard corals form intricate frameworks that host an astonishing diversity of life. Parrotfish graze on algae, their beaks carving grooves in coral skeletons, while butterfly fish probe crevices for hidden morsels. Giant clams open their harbor-like valves to filter plankton, and sea cucumbers recycle detritus across sandy floors. No nets cut through this fragile tapestry. No ghost deer hangs from branching corals like invasive vines. The reef pulses with renewal and growth, untroubled by human scars. Every coral reef is a multi-storied metropolis. Canopy corals arch overhead like cathedrals, their polyps waving tentacles in quiet prayer. Parrotfish and surgeonfish patrol the mid-levels, nibbling and dancing in shoals of shimmering scales. Beneath, damselfish dart among anemones, guardians of tiny gardens, while gobies in partnership with shrimp build delicate burrowed hideaways. The reef's nocturnal heart awakens at dusk as technicolor parades of shrimps and crabs emerge to feast under the faintest moonlight. In this netless expanse, the delicate life cycles of coral spawning events, pulsing in lunar rhythms, play out without disruption. A sovereign circle of life spun by water and light. Beyond the tropics, temperate seas host kelp forests that billow like underwater wheat fields. Giant kelp anchors in rocky shallows, its fronds stretching toward the surface to catch sunbeams. Otters float on their backs amid the stalks, cracking sea urchins against their chests while their whiskers detect the faintest currents. Schools of herring weave through swaying kelp, seeking cover from predatory lingcod that lurk among the roots. In colder waters, seals and sea lions haul out on isolated islets, their cries echoing against sandstone cliffs. These underwater forests, unbothered by trawlers scouring for bottom fish, flourish in silent harmony. Meanwhile, seagrass meadows line sheltered bays, their ribbon-like leaves waving in tidal rhythms. Here, juvenile fish find nurseries of safety. Rays and small sharks breed in shaded channels. Sea turtles graze on seagrass blades, cropping tender leaves and fertilizing meadows with their passing. No propellers churn these flats. No nets drag across soft sediment. Instead, currents distribute nutrients that sustain these critical habitats, and the meadows themselves trap sediments, maintaining water clarity that benefits reefs and seagrasses alike. Even deeper, in the sunless realm of the mesopelagic zone, life unfolds in a tapestry of bioluminescent flickers. Lanternfish drift in silent columns, their photophores pulsing in ethereal patterns. Jellies drift like drifting ghosts of light, their gelatinous bells carrying microscopic prey. Predatory dragons of the deep sea squid with photonic lures snag curious swimmers drawn to their glow. In this world without nets, the mysteries of the deep flourish, each organism shaped by the dance of darkness and light in extremes of pressure and cold. On the abyssal plains, life clings to slow rhythms. Sea cucumbers sift fine organic particles that drift from shallower waters. Brittle stars wave feathery arms to catch detritus. In the rare event of a whale fall, a carcass drifting down to the seabed communities of specialized bacteria and scavengers swarm, transforming bone into ecosystems that feed in the darkness. No trawlers have plowed these depths. No dredges have scraped the muddy surface. Instead, the abyss remains a quiet hinterland, where life persists in patient cycles of feast and famine. Circling currents carry nutrients across ocean basins. Upwelling zones bring cold, mineral-rich waters to the sunlit surface, igniting blooms of plankton that support fish stocks and migratory seabirds. Albatrosses and petrels wheel above these productive waters, their wings spanning storms as they search for squid and small fish. In a netless ocean, the full bounty of these upwellings feeds seabird colonies that nest on remote cliffs, their guano-enriching soils for coastal vegetation. Pelagic predators, sharks patrol these open seas as sovereigns. Great whites cruise the thermocline, their dorsal fins trailing like dorsal sails above shimmering waters. Mako sharks streak through blue horizons at astonishing speeds, their torpedo-shaped bodies honed by millions of years of evolution. In this world unfettered by long lines or gillnets, shark populations remain robust, their apex roles essential for maintaining balance by culling sick and weak prey. Mangrove forests fringe sheltered shorelines in tropical latitudes. Their tangle of roots traps sediments, reducing coastal erosion and filtering nutrients. Fish, crustaceans, and mollusks use mangrove nurseries before venturing into reefs and open seas. In spring, juvenile barramundi and snapper dart in flooded mangrove hollows, safe within labyrinthine prop roots. No timber cutters have felled these living breakwaters. No shrimp farms have drowned them in saline lagoons. Instead, these sentinels of the shore protect coastlines from storms and nurture the next generation of marine life. In polar seas, life rallies beneath ice floes. Under Arctic pack ice, polar cod and Arctic cod gather in schools, feeding seals and narwhals that navigate through leads and cracks. In Antarctic waters, krill congregate beneath ice shelves, drawing whales, penguins, and seals in massive feeding events. Bellies of minke and humpback whales visibly distend as they dive through swarms of krill, mouths open in graceful funnels. With no icebreakers carving swaths through pack ice and no nets trampling krill beds, these polar realms remain pristine reservoirs of marine abundance. Encircling the planet, major ocean gyres shuffle debris and nutrients. In a world without human litter, those currents would carry only driftwood, kelp fragments, and the occasional pumice stone from submarine eruptions. Pelagic birds like albatross and sheer waters snatch fish from the meandering convergence zones, where cold and warm waters mingle. Under the open sky, the symphony of life above and below the waves unfolds without disturbance. A planetary-scale ecosystem woven by currents, wind, and light. Seasonal rhythms govern this netless ocean as surely as tidal pulses govern the shore. In spring, plankton blooms ignite a chain reaction of growth, fueling migrations of fish, whales, and seabirds. Summer seas teem with life. Jellyfish swarms shimmer like drifting lanterns. Autumn sees abundance of tropical waters for warmer feeding grounds, and winter's chill drives some marine mammals to southern or equatorial refuges. In every hemisphere, species synchronize their lives with ocean cycles, unconstrained by human fishing seasons or closures. In this teeming ocean, the concept of overfishing vanishes. Schools of tuna sparkle under the sun, migrating along ancient pathways from spawning grounds in tropical seas to rich feeding zones in temperate waters. Scientists estimate that pre-industrial tuna populations were tenfold greater than today's depleted stocks. In a world without nets, these predators maintain healthy numbers, their predation pressure shaping the abundance and behavior of their prey, keeping marine ecosystems in dynamic equilibrium. Coral reefs in Southeast Asia, the Pacific, and the Caribbean stand not as remnant gardens, but as vast continuous landscapes of color. Elkhorn and staghorn corals form labyrinthine thickets, and brain corals vault into dome-shaped structures. Parrotfish graze on opportunistic algae, their bites sculpting reef contours. Reef sharks patrol the outer edges, securing the realm against unchecked prey surges. In this coral utopia, diseases like bleaching occur only under rare natural stress, healed by the interconnected genetics of unfragmented coral populations. Even the smallest seahorses and nudibranchs thrive in this marine Eden. Seahorses anchor to seagrass blades with prehensile tails, preying on planktonic crustaceans in the gentle currents. Nudibranchs slugs of the sea display kaleidoscopic patterns on reef faces, warning predators of their toxic defenses. Octopuses slip through crevices, their intelligence showcased in problem-solving behaviors and complex camouflage. Invertebrate communities flourish in every crevice and cavity, unperturbed by nets that would otherwise shred sponges and sweep away brittle corals. Turtles carve timeless paths across the waves. Leatherback sea turtles glide between jellyfish blooms, their scutes glinting under the sun. Green turtles roam seagrass meadows, grazing on grasses that carpet shallow bays. Hawksbill turtles pick sponges from coral outcrops, shaping reef community dynamics. In the absence of ghost nets and coastal pollution, these ancient mariners navigate by celestial cues, returning to natal beaches under starlit skies to lay clutches of eggs, ensuring their species' survival. In the deep sea, submersible expeditions unveil strange ecosystems blooming around hydrothermal vents. Tube forms grow in towering clusters, their red plumes sucking in hydrogen sulfide to fuel chemosynthetic bacteria. Giant shrimp press against vent chimneys, harvesting nutrients released from Earth's molten core. On sunless cliffs hundreds of meters below, squat lobsters and brittle stars thrive in nutrient plumes. In this realm, nets would vanish instantly under crushing pressure, yet the deep sea remains protected by its very remoteness, a world of extremes where life perseveres in isolation. Even the slightest ripple of the ocean surface influences global climate. Gentle trade winds draw moist air inland, sustaining rainforests that in turn feed rivers to nourish terrestrial ecosystems. In a netless ocean, healthy fish populations cycle nutrients in and out of coastal wetlands, supporting mangroves that stabilize coastlines and sequester carbon in roots. Phytoplankton blooms fix carbon, part of an ancient mechanism that regulates Earth's temperature. The ocean breathes alongside land, bound by currents, winds, and the living skin of the sea. No nets now entangle the ocean's treasures. No trawlers tear at delicate seascapes. Instead, these seas flourish as they have for hundreds of millions of years, sculpted by tides and currents, warmed by sunlight, and enriched by the deep. In this realm of infinite blue, whales reign as gentle giants, coral reefs stand as living mosaics, fish shoals dance in shifting schools, and every creature from shrimp to shark plays its role unimpeded. The ocean's orchestra performs without human interruption, a symphony of life in endless, unbroken motion. The first light of morning arrives without fanfare, brushing the horizon in gentle hues of rose and gold. The sky, unblemished by contrails or whispering jets, is a vast expanse of soft blue waiting to be filled. As the sun peaks above distant ridge lines, the air stirs with the soft flapping of wings, a herald of life on the wing. In that moment, the heavens become a living canvas, painted by the synchronized flights of countless birds embarking on journeys written deep in their bones. From mist-shrouded wetlands come the high, lilting calls of sandhill cranes, their silhouettes rising in perfect V formations against the pale glow of dawn. Their calls echo across marshes that mirror the sky, each honk a timeless signal to stride together toward warmer lands. Farther inland, skeins of geese wheel overhead, honking encouragement along invisible highways. Their pointed wings cut through the cool air, tracing the faint outlines of mountain passes and river valleys that guide them south. In this world free of human flight, these ancient superhighways remain the arteries of avian migration, open and unimpeded, marked only by the instincts of species older than any runway. As the sun climbs, tidal flats ahead of spring tides shimmer with life. A massive flock of shorebirds, sandpipers, plovers, and curlews descends in seamless motion. They weave in and out of each other, a living blur on the horizon. Each bird dances along the shoreline, probing wet sand with slender bills for marine worms and tiny mollusks exposed by retreating water. Their synchronized swoops and rises are not random, but choreographed by the shifting tide's rhythm, a ballet honed over generations. Here, the sky and shore meet in whispered communion, each bird's movement a note in the unbroken melody of the sea. Over tropical forests, the air shimmers with the passage of swiftlets and swallows. These diminutive aerialists dart and twist amid sunbeams, feasting on swarms of winged insects carried on thermals. Their bodies are built for flight-long wings, forked tails, and streamlined forms adaptations unclouded by the roaring of engines. In the absence of human-made noise, their trills and twittering calls stand out, filling the canopy with songs that speak of satisfaction and endless summer. As the forest echoes with their chatter, they reveal an ecosystem entirely shaped by wind and weather, by sunlight and rain, by the shifting tapestry of living green below. High above the tree line, raptors ride invisible currents. Eagles, kites, and hawks patrol the firmament in silent circles, scanning valleys for small mammals stirring beneath tall grasses. Their sharp cries, high-pitched whistles, or deep, resonant screams pierce the mountain air like heralds, announcing their mastery of sky and land alike. On days when the sun warms the slopes, thermal updrafts form lanes of rising air that stretch for miles. Unassisted by any man-made device, raptors lean into these currents, tiptoeing between earth and sky as they survey hunting grounds below. Each effortless glide speaks of a partnership between avian anatomy and the atmosphere's unseen energies. When summer's first heat waves dance across the plains, an altogether different migration takes flight. Millions of monarch butterflies, tiny orange gyres, in a colossal wheel rise from milkweed patches, and set out on an epic voyage to temperate retreats. Their fragile bodies, carried on gentle breezes, trace invisible funnels of air that spiral over continents. Along the way, their wings brush against clouds of pollen-rich blooms, their presence a delicate reminder that not all migrations occur on wings strong enough to carry a human body. Here, the sky becomes a vast journal of passage, etched by the silent journeys of creatures measured not in miles per hour, but in sheer perseverance. Come autumn, the skies darken with the passage of blackbirds and starlings as they gather before nightfall in roaring murmurations. Thousands upon thousands of birds wheel in shifting columns above reed beds and meadows, their shapes flickering like living smoke against the evening glow. The horizon quivers with their massed forms, an aerial storm that births and dissolves in a single breath. In that fleeting spectacle, one senses the unity of countless individuals acting on the same ancient impulse, to gather, to shelter, to journey onward. Below them, mole crickets stir in the leaf litter, sensing the gravity-bound rumble of wings, heralding shorter days and paper-thin nights. When darkness finally descends, the sky transforms into an ocean of stars, untainted by city lights or airplane glows. Night migrants rise into this firmament, reed warblers and thrushes leaving woodland roosts, heading south under constellations that have stood unchanged for millennia. They navigate by the rhythm of the stars, by the tilt of Earth's axis, by the magnetic grid that runs unseen between pole and pole. With no radar to guide them, they rely solely on the ancient maps etched into their instincts, flying through the lunar months and passing over sleeping plains. Their call soft whistles, plaintive trills drift on the breeze, a nighttime chorus that transforms darkness into living space. High above, in the stratosphere where no human jet strays, turkey vultures and some species of hawk catch the last warm currents of the day on wings spread like sails. Their silhouettes drift past thinning high clouds, never distracted by contrails or air traffic controls. They survey the world with keen eyes, looking for the carcasses wind and sun have left behind. In a realm untouched by engines, the skies remain a sanctuary for these scavengers, allowing them to play their vital role in nature's circle of life and death. Even in the stillness of deep winter, when frost sculpts delicate patterns on window panes and ice grips lake shores, the skies remain alive. Snow geese and tundra swans traverse polar fronts, riding between frozen Arctic springs and temperate marshes. Their honks echo across frozen wastelands, bouncing off ice floes and evergreen stands. When rivers freeze solid, they sweep down valley corridors in great ribbons of white, their streamlined forms slicing through the air in a testament to endurance. And when the solar winds dance in the high latitudes, the northern lights shimmer overhead, a cosmic counterpart to these avian migrations that linked Earth to the heavens. In the absence of airplanes, the The sky also hosts creatures that bridge night and day. Bats emerge from hidden caves and hollows, their soft wings stirring the night as they hunt insects beneath the stars. Using ultrasonic calls, they navigate an invisible world, darting through moonlit corridors with uncanny precision. Their silhouettes flicker across the face of the moon, a delicate ballet of echolocation and flight. Without the roar of jet engines overhead, their high-frequency voices resonate across silent peaks, reminding us that flight is not the sole province of birds, and that the skies hold unseen performers at every hour. Through it all, the cycle of seasons turns like a silent wheel. Spring brings fledglings to the nest, bright new lives testing their wings in the filtered light of leaf crowns. Summer sustains migrations of avian travelers, feasting on abundant insects and berries, building strength for journeys soon to come. Autumn's cooling breezes send flocks riding southward on invisible lanes of air, painting the sky with arcs of shape and pattern. And winter's chill sculpts the heavens into crystalline clarity, sealing the world in frosted beauty, while life's rhythms continue above. In this world of skies untouched, every horizon is a frontier of life. No smokestacks stain the sunset. No contrails etch the blue canopy. Here, the rhythms of flight are dictated by currents, by stars, by seasons, by instincts older than any civilization. The sky remains a living tapestry, constantly shifting, always alive. Each day's flight is a chapter in a tale as old as life itself, a narrative of wings beating in unison across boundless space. And as you look upward, you become part of that story, a silent observer in a world where the sky belongs not to machines, but to the timeless dance of nature's fullest flight. The air is crisp at first light, and a pale sun peers over distant ice-capped ridges, casting long shadows across the rolling tundra steppe. In the hush before dawn breaks fully, great silhouettes move in stately procession. A herd of woolly mammoths, shaggy with long hair and armed with curved ivory tusks. They tread the frozen grasses in measured rhythm, each massive footfall compressing permafrost and loosening sediments teeming with organic nutrients. No human hunters lie in wait here. No thunder of modern engines interrupts their journey. Instead, these giants reclaim a world they once dominated, shaping the land with every step, sustaining ecosystems that bloom in their wake. As light strengthens, the texture of the landscape emerges. Endless grass-formed prairies speckled with sagebrush, interspersed with groves of dwarf willows and birches. Mammoths wade through knee-deep tussocks, swinging their trunks from side to side, sweeping aside mats of lichen and moss in search of dried grasses and buried roots. Their molar teeth grind coarse fodder into pulp, recycling carbon trapped in ancient vegetation. Each exhalation sends vapor into the cold air, mingling with dew and frost to create soft halos around their great forms. At their flanks, young calves nuzzle beneath their mothers' bellies, protected by a circle of adults whose tusks form a living barrier. These family groups, sometimes spanning dozens of individuals, migrate with the seasons, following the pulse of spring's green up northward and the taiga's frozen edge southward in autumn. Their passage hollows trails in the tundra, channels that shelter small mammals and insects from biting winds. In summer, these paths fill with meltwater, transforming tracks into nutrient-rich ponds where waterfowl gather to hatch their broods. Beyond the mammoths, in transitional woodlands where taiga yields to open steppe, a different megaherbivore thrives, the mastodon. Stockier and shorter-haired, mastodons browse on young conifer shoots, poplar twigs, and the succulent leaves of aquatic plants in marshy hollows. Their broad, ridged molars are perfect for crushing bark and fibrous stems. In the spring thaw, mastodons venture into flooded wetlands, their massive bodies stirring up silt and releasing trapped nutrients that feed emergent grasses and sedges. Water lily blankets slow channels, their blossoms nodding in currents set in motion by swelling rivers. In more wooded thickets cavities of forest, where ancient oaks and elms stand sentinel another colossus moves, the giant ground sloth. Oversized cousins of today's tree sloths, these lumbering browsers stretch 6 meters tall on their hind legs, rearing up to reach the highest branches. With curved claws, they strip foliage and peeling bark, consuming hundreds of kilograms of vegetation each day. Their droppings carpet the forest floor in rich compost, fostering fungal growth and nurturing seedlings of maples, lindens, and solanaceous plants. As they feed, they carve access routes through dense understory, creating corridors that guide deer, boar, and smaller browsers to fresh forage. At night, when shadows deepen beneath moss-draped boughs, giant ground sloths retreat to hollowed stumps or burrow shallow dens, safe from prowling predators. Their heavy frames and armored skin deter smaller carnivores. Only the largest hunters dare test their defenses. Occasionally, the cavernous hollows serve as rendezvous points for social gatherings. Young individuals investigating burrows, mothers coaxing offspring with guttural calls. Within these secret chambers, spores drift in damp air, incubating fungi that will emerge in autumn as delicate mushrooms at the slightest touch of warm rain. Roaming the rugged uplands are the woolly rhinoceros, their humped shoulders and forward-curving horns silhouetted against the crimson sky of dawn. Feeding on coarse grasses and low shrubs pushed free of ice by warming soils, they create grazing mosaics that maintain the prairie forest border. Their powerful horns break through packed snow and ice to access buried vegetation, and as they wander, they compact fallen logs into brush heaps that later catch wind-blown seeds, seeding new growth pockets for goldenrod and asters. Meanwhile, in rocky valleys carved by retreating glaciers, cave bears lumber among pines and spruces, feasting on roots and tubers harvested from alpine meadows. Their staggering weight and massive jaws crush everything in their path. In midsummer, they climb into subalpine meadows to gorge on berry shrubs, blueberries, raspberries, and the first cranberries storing fat in their enormous bodies. As autumn's chill sets in, they descend to caverns far beneath glacial cliffs, curling in tight coils as they hibernate for months on reserves laid down by summer abundance. But the age of megafauna is not just an era of herbivores. In lee of basalt ridges, with sunlight-piercing morning mist, saber-toothed cats slip through grasses on padded paws. Their short, robust bodies and elongated canines suggest ambush hunting. They crouch low in grassy hummocks, eyes fixed on bison herds that graze in the distance. When the moment comes, they launch explosive lunges, using those curved teeth to deliver precise killing bites at the throat. In a world without human interference, their prey populations, bison, elk, caribou, are ample, sustaining stable predator-prey cycles that keep ecosystems in dynamic balance. Farther north, where musk ox graze in ancient ice patches, shorter-faced bears occasionally challenge adult animals, seizing young calves straying too close to snowfields. Wolves, too, roam these tundra frontiers. Packs coalitions of 10 or more coordinate their hunts across drifting drifts of snow. They shadow caribou herds on their migrations, employing endurance rather than speed to outlast individuals in deep snow. When a caribou falters, wolves close ranks, targeting flanks with methodical nips until their quarry collapses. Leftovers nourish scavengers, wolverines and ravens that complete the feast, distributing nutrients even into the remotest corners of the Arctic. On open grasslands, dire wolves supplement their diet by hunting in cooperative packs, racing alongside pronghorn herds whose own lightning speed has evolved in response to predator pressure. Dire wolves are larger and more robust than their modern counterparts. Their jaws can crush bones, and their shoulder muscles power sprints across flattened plains. As spring rains green the steppe, packs split into hunting subgroups, some targeting adult ungulates, others focusing on fawns and smaller mammals. When the rains recede, herds disperse, and wolves follow old migratory corridors, relying on scent trails imprinted in the earth. Along untrammeled riverbanks, giant beavers gnaw at tree trunks, felling aspens and cottonwoods to build dams and lodges that reshape small watersheds. Their early dams slow water flow, creating ponds that teem with fish, frogs, and freshwater mussels. The resulting wetlands sustain populations of waterfowl, wild swans, and geese, whose broods thrive in the rich shallows. Beaver engineering expands riparian habitat, connecting meadows to forests in a patchwork of biodiversity, unbroken by levees or dams. In more southern latitudes, glyptodonts, huge armadillo-like creatures, tread with armor-plated backs across savanna woodlands. Their stubby tails, tipped with bony clubs, deter saber-tooth ambushes. As grazers, they feed on tough grasses and fallen fruits, their broad, grinding teeth turning fibrous stems into mulch. In the dry season, they dig shallow pits with stout claws to unearth succulent roots and tubers. These feeding stations later fill with rainwater, providing ephemeral habitats for amphibians and invertebrates. Throughout these landscapes, the interplay of megafaunal herbivores, predators, and ecosystem engineers maintains a tapestry of habitats. Open grasslands kept free of woody encroachment by mammoths and rhinoceros. Wetlands created by beaver dams. Nutrient hotspots around carrion sites where wolves and bears feed. Forest clearings carved by giant sloths. Seasonal rhythms: spring thaw, monsoon rains, summer drought, autumn frost, coordinate migrations, breeding cycles, and hibernation patterns. No human canopy of noise, roads, or fences disturbs these patterns. The great beasts of Earth's twilight age roam as they have for hundreds of thousands of years. With no humans to hunt them, megafauna populations stabilize at densities governed by resource availability and intraspecific competition. Mammoth herds flourish in the Arctic steppe, sustaining tens of thousands across Siberia and Alaska. Saber-toothed cats range from southern forests to northern tundra margins, their numbers balanced by prey abundance. Giant ground sloths persist in tropical and temperate woodlands, their populations regulated by plant productivity and predation pressure. Giant beaver ponds dot river networks, providing enduring wetlands that outlast generations of smaller creatures. In places where our ancestors once learned to stalk and kill, we now imagine the unbroken fields of Ice Age life. Migrations of horses genus Equus, once native to North America, wind like silver ribbons across grass seas, their hooves churning soil, aerating seed beds, and preventing woody succession. Bison, too, roam in herds that thunder across plains, their wallowing pits creating microhabitats for amphibians and small mammals. Tapirs, giant peccaries, and llama-like camelids fill forests and foothills, each shaping vegetation through selective browsing. No human hunting arrow severed these ancient lineages. Instead, evolution runs its course in gentle slants. Diseases, often vectored by insects and rodents, prune weak individuals, maintaining herd health. Starvation during lean winters thins herds, followed by population rebounds in lush springs. Genetic diversity thrives in unfragmented populations. As individuals disperse along ancestral corridors, carved through landscapes by ice sheets' advance and retreat. Imagine the resplendent spectacle, endless savannas shimmering under heat waves, Arctic plains alive with mammoth silhouettes, tropical woodlands echoing to the creaking calls of ground sloths, temperate forests patrolled by short-faced bears and dire wolves, coral reefs alive with fish whose abundance rivals the great migrations of grand herds. Each scene unfolds in perfect balance, shaped by bodies far larger than any human footprint. As continents warm in cyclical turns, these giants adapt. Mammoths develop thicker coats in cooler epochs. In interglacial warmth, their dust baths replace mud wallows, and dew-soaked meadows feed expanding herds. Saber-toothed cats refine ambush tactics among new forest structures. Giant sloths alter their diets to include emergent plant species, while beaver dams buffer waterways against droughts and floods alike. In this world, Without human hunting, without fences, without engines, without the crack of rifle shots, the age of megafauna extends indefinitely. Ice Age ecosystems persist into warm Holocene centuries and beyond, as if time itself yielded to the weight of these colossal lives. Their presence stabilizes climates, sequesters carbon in tundra soils and wetland peat, and dictates the grandeur of living landscapes far beyond the capacity of any human plan. When the sun sets, the calls of wolves echo in canyons carved by glaciation. The roar of a rutting musk ox drifts across snowy ridges. A lone mammoth bull trumpets in the dusk, a sound that once defined a continent's heartbeat. Under a canopy of ice-brilliant stars, the age of megafauna continues an unbroken chapter of Earth's story, where the largest beasts roam freely, their fates tied not to human whim, but to the slow, majestic cycles of nature itself. The first light of dawn finds the savanna subdued and cooled by night's retreat, the grass a muted green under a pale sky. From the sea of grass, a low rumble rises a lion pride emerging from their thorn bush thicket. Eyes half closed in the early glow, adult females stretch lithe bodies, flex muscled limbs, tails flicking to shoo away gnats. Cubs tumble between protective paws, learning the soft pad of a hunter's step. Without human fences to hem them in or rifles to thin their ranks, these lions roam across hundreds of square kilometers, patrolling territories defined by scent and roar. Their presence shapes every life around them. Zebras graze warily at dawn, scanning tree lines for movement. Impalas press closer to waterholes near midday, wary of deadly ambushes beneath acacias. The savanna itself bends to the rhythm of lion hunts, silent as they slip through high grass, jaws poised to clamp down in a single killing surge. In the shadowy hills of temperate forests, gray wolves stir into action. A sentinel at the pack's edge sniffs the crisp air, nostrils flaring to catch the scent of elk herds grazing across open clearings. Their haunting chorus rises in low howls, harmonizing as wind chimes in the dusk breeze. They fan out in precise formation, teams of hunters advancing on cautious stag, whose ears flick at the sound of paws on pine needles. With no roads fragmenting their domain or hunters staking out stands, wolves follow ancestral trails across mountains and valleys, keeping ungulate populations in check. Their hunts sculpt the land. Overbrowsed thickets recover where wolves drive deer from riverbanks. Willow and aspen once again rise to line streams, stabilizing banks and shading trout-filled waters. The forest breathes new life under wolf stewardship, a living mosaic balanced by predator and prey. Farther north, where boreal forests give way to tundra, the bulk of the brown bear emerges from a winter den. Rubbing shoulders against frost-caked birches, it shakes crystalline water from dense fur before plunging into a berry-studded meadow. These omnivorous giants feast on salmon run beneath crystal rivers, their massive paws gouging spawning beds and revealing hidden nutrients for insects and amphibians. They wander through glacial valleys, almost unnoticed, shapes of myth drifting between alpine pines. With no fur trappers to decimate their numbers, bears cycle nutrients from sea to land, carrying spawning fish in their jaws and leaving scraps that feed eagles and foxes. At summer's height, they climb mossy ridges to sample the first snowfall of huckleberries interwoven, ecosystems bound by the paths of these gentle behemoths. In the labyrinth of coral reefs beneath turquoise waves, the predator pantheon extends its reach into the sea. A shadow glides over branching staghorn corals, a reef shark on patrol. Its sleek form, honed by millions of years of evolution, glides effortlessly in currents stirred by tidal shifts. Without nets drawn through reef channels, fish shoals thrive in vibrant numbers, offering a banquet for this apex hunter. Reef sharks keep mid-level predators in check, preventing overgrazing of herbivorous fish that, in turn, preserve algae-scoured corals. This balance ensures reefs remain alive cathedrals of color where clownfish shelter in anemone arms. Parrotfish carve patterns in coral walls, and giant clams filter sunlight. Each predator's presence resonates through every reef zone, sustaining the delicate architecture of life beneath the surface. On open ocean highways, great white sharks carve invisible routes between seamounts and continental shells. Their dorsal fins slice through sun-flecked waves as they circle seals sunning on rocky islets. In a world without long lines and gill nets, these titanic hunters maintain the health of marine ecosystems by targeting the sick and old seals weakened by age, fish already slowed by parasites, thereby fortifying the gene pool. Orcas, too, roam the high seas in familial pods, mastering coordinated hunts that drive salmon into narrow inlets at river mouths. Their pulses and clicks echo through depths, guiding their kin across hundreds of miles. In their wake, fish populations stay robust. Schools of herring surge triumphantly, feeding seabirds that plunge from starlit skies. The open ocean hums with predator-driven rhythms of life and balance. On sweeping grasslands of the Americas, where prairies ripple to the horizon, jaguars prowl along marshy riverbanks. Their spotted coats blend seamlessly into dappled light, falling through cypress stands. Nightfall sees them slinking through cattails, ears attuned to the splash of capybaras or the ripple of caiman under dense overhangs. In the absence of persecution, jaguars command these watery realms, their leaps churning eddies that stir fish and crustaceans. With jaguars undisturbed, rodent and herbivore populations never explode. Overgrazing subsides, and seedling forests reclaim floodplain edges. Their stealthy presence rewrites the story of riverine forests, guiding successional paths unseen by human hand. Above lakes and rivers, eagles survey kingdoms from lofty perches. Bald eagles in northern fjords lift into thermals that spiral above ice cliffs, talons poised to snatch salmon slicing upriver. Golden eagles in high deserts wheel across sagebrush expanses, seeking pronghorn fawns teetering at dawn. With no power lines to entangle and no shooting lines to enclose, these raptors maintain territories spanning square miles. Their calls echo across granite outcrops, arcing skies as sovereign havens for flight. Below them, riparian ecosystems thrive under the watchful eye of aerial predators, keeping murmurations of starlings from settling into destructive roosts in orchard canopies no longer harvested by human hands. In the shadowy depths of ancient caves, large owls, giant barn owls, and Eurasian eagle owls roost above mewling rodent gatherings. Come moonrise, they launch in silent flight, wings sculpted for stealth, feathers edged to cancel turbulence. Their heart-shaped faces funnel sound to ears tuned for the faintest scurry on bark or the whisper of a vole across frozen ground. In a world without rodenticide, their natural predation regulates mouse and rat populations, preventing disease outbreaks and supporting the health of forest soils and seed banks. Each silent flight is an echo of primal rhythm, a nightly survey of balance beneath a dome of starlight. On sprawling savannas, the cheetah's slender form unfurls in explosive sprint. No roads fragment territories, so coalitions of brothers chase Thompson's gazelles across unbroken plains, their lithe bodies stalking through tall grass, until, with a burst of speed, they overtake agile prey. Female cheetahs raise cubs in thorn-dotted hideaways, guiding them toward independence through lessons in patience and timing. Their migratory routes remain clear ancient corridors, passed among mother to cub to grandcub. In seasons of feast and drought, cheetahs keep herbivore herds fit and swift, weaving strength and agility into the very sinews of the grassland. In the lush back-to-the-land woodlands of continents unbroken by roads, the jaguarundi and puma slink through vines. No threats from snares or bullet rounds to steal their secrets. They stalk peccaries and coetus with cat-like grace, their low growls invisible beneath the canopy's hush. These mid-level predators prevent mesopredator release, keeping fox and raccoon populations balanced, ensuring that songbird nests survive to hatch new generations. With apex predators intact, biodiversity flourishes in nested hierarchies of panther and puma, ocelot and margay, each carving its niche in the tapestry of life. Across remote islands, the Komodo dragon rules. Its heavy steps shake volcanic sands as it scents carrion left by seabirds roosting on clifftops. With no ivory poachers or tourism boats to gleam on its scales, these dragons roam across savanna and forest interior, maintaining small mammal populations. Their venom slows prey struggles, granting time for a single fatal bite. The dragon's feeding grounds, untouched by human campsites, provide safe havens for niche species flightless birds and island rodents preserving unique ecologies found nowhere else on Earth. On glaciers and ice flows, polar bears patrol ice edges, where seals haul out on wind-sculpted ridges. In a world without oil rigs or melting ice shipping lanes, they hunt with unbroken lines of sight, their white frames nearly invisible in snow-stained ice. With seals undisturbed by seal collars or nets, seals thrive in thick numbers, sustaining ice-bearing nutrients in marine food webs. Polar bears keep the cycle of life turning between sea and ice, a testament to resilience in a land forged by winter's might. In subtropical mangroves, saltwater crocodiles slip between roots and prop roots, ambushing water buffalo and deer that wander too close to brackish streams. Without fishing nets to extract baby crocs for leather farms, these reptiles reach full growth, their scaly backs rippling with warmth each dawn. Their nesting mounds of vegetation fertilize the tadeflats, creating microhabitats for crustaceans and juvenile fish. The mangroves themselves prosper under crocodile stewardship, protected from overgrazing by ivorous mammals and sculpted into channels woven with predator and prey. Even among the smallest apex hunters, life rains down in perfect balance. Praying mantises perch on wildflowers, seizing hummingbird hawk moth larvae with scythe-like forelimbs. Dragonfly nymphs roam aquatic routes, ambushing mosquito larvae in shallow ponds. Spiders spin webs laden with flying insects, catching midges drawn to moonlight. Each miniature predator polices its realm, maintaining insect populations so that wildflowers, grains, and trees can thrive undisciplined by pest outbreaks. In every ecosystem, mountain, desert, wetland, sea, the absence of human eradication and competition reveals the full measure of predators' roles. Lions carve territories on savannas. Wolves reshape forest and plain. Bears recycle nutrients from mountain streams to tundra moss. Sharks polish coral realms. Eagles trace wind currents in search of fresh quarry. Their unbroken lineages write the stories of coevolution, timetables etched in teeth and claws, in migrations and ambushes, in the silent code of instinct passed from generation to generation. When the sun dips low and the horizon glows amber, predators of every stripe settle to rest or prowl beneath fading light. Their calls, roars, howls, growls, clicks fade into the hush of night. The sky holds no contrails, the land no gunfire. Instead, every shadow is alive, every breath a testament to hunting's primeval art. In this world untouched by human competition or eradication, predators stand at the top not as trophies, but as sovereign, stewards, architects of balance, keepers of wild harmony. And so, as you lie under the canopy of stars, listen for the softest rustle of foot, fin, or claw. In that breathless stillness, you will hear the heartbeat of predators, shaping the living world in unbroken rhythms of survival and renewal. Imagine a morning when the world awakens not to the hum of engines or the crack of rifles, but to a seamless choreography of life unfolding exactly as it has for millennia. In the hush before sunrise, you step into a clearing at the edge of an ancient woodland. The air stills around you, cool with dew, and the first hints of dawn color the sky. From the shadows, a red fox emerges, nose flicking as it scents the crisp air. It pauses at the rubbing patch of a gray wolf, whose paw prints trail deeper into the forest. Ahead, the undergrowth stirs as a family of deer slips away from ferns and brambles to graze on tender shoots. Here, within a single breath, you feel the heartbeat of nature's balanced predator and prey, soil and seed, rain and drought, each pulse in perfect counterpoint. As sunbeams strike the canopy, the woodland floor brightens. Lichens drape tree trunks. Moss cushions the bases of oaks. Beneath the leaves, seeds from last autumn's mast draw up moisture, germinating in the soft humus. Young maples and birches push slender shoots toward the light, pioneers in an endless cycle of succession. The forest edge is a tapestry in transition. Open glades where grasses sway in the breeze. Shaded groves where shade-tolerant wildflowers and ferns splay themselves across the soil. This mosaic of habitats springs not from human design, but from the rhythm of disturbance's fallen trees, windstorms, fire, and the patient work of regrowth. In this living laboratory, predators play a quiet but vital role. Wolves, operating in packs, keep deer populations in check, preventing overbrowsing of saplings and ground cover. Where wolves tread, deer graze more cautiously, circulating nutrients, but never stripping the regeneration from the forest understory. Their presence stirs the landscape of fear, as scientists call it, shaping deer behavior so saplings can grow to maturity. In turn, saplings mature into sturdy trees that anchor soils, sequester carbon, and shelter songbirds, some of which dine on insects that would otherwise ravage those same maples. Each interaction reverberates like ripples on a pond, connecting predator to prey to plants. Step into a grassland at midday, and the balance takes on a different face. Here, fire is nature's sculptor. Lightning-struck savannas blaze with low-intensity flames, clearing dead biomass and returning nutrients to the soil. Grasses, with their underground rhizomes, swiftly regenerate after these natural burns, outpacing woody invaders whose seedlings lie vulnerable. Bison herds thick-haired and broad-humped thunder across these plains, grazing where fresh shoots emerge and trampling ground to prevent invasive shrubs from taking root. Their wallows create depressions that collect rainwater, forming miniature wetlands where amphibians breed and insects flourish. Wolves trail the bison, culling the old and weak, whereas scavengers like ravens and coyotes complete the cycle by picking bones clean, their droppings dispersing seeds and fertilizer across the prairie. Move to a tropical rainforest, and you witness yet another facet of balance. In this realm, predatory cats like jaguars move silently through dense undergrowth, knocking over shrubs in their pursuit of peccaries or capybaras. Their kills steady herbivore numbers, preventing local overgrazing. High in the canopy, harpy eagles survey clay licks where parrots, macaws, and toucanets gather to ingest mineral-rich soil essential for seed digestion. The eagles swoop down, but they prey on monkeys or sloths only occasionally. Most of the time, smaller predators, ocelots, margays, and terrors manage populations of rodents and reptiles, keeping the forest floor in check so palm seedlings and epiphytes have room to grow. All around, plant succession unfolds in concentric arcs of time. Treefall gaps circular patches where a fallen giant has cleared the canopy become breeding grounds for pioneer species like Cecropia, whose light-demanding seedlings shoot skyward. Over decades, these pioneers shade out grasses and vines, paving the way for mid-succession trees such as mahogany and kapok. Eventually, in the absence of major disturbance, a climax community arises, towering emergence that define the rainforest skyline. Yet nature never rests. Storms uproot trees. Landslides open new corridors. Rivers shift channels. Each event resets small patches of forest, ensuring a patchwork of successional stages that sustains maximum biodiversity. On coral reefs, the invisible hand of balance wields chemical whispers. Parrotfish, those rainbow-scaled vacuum cleaners of the sea, graze tirelessly on algae that, unchecked, would smother coral polyps. By munching algal turf, They give juvenile corals a fighting chance to settle and grow. Sharks patrol the reef edges, taking out sick or old fish and preventing any single species from dominating. When sharks abound, mid-level predators like groupers scatter, allowing small herbivores to flourish. The result is a reef alive with color, branching corals in pink and violet, sea stars dotting sandy patches, anemones waving neon tentacles above clownfish darting in and out. Succession here is sculpted in calcium carbonate over centuries, new reef framework rising where old structures. Breakdown maintained by the cosmic dance of fish and reef builders. Climate shifts add yet another layer of self-regulation. In regions touched by monsoons, the annual rains flood lowland forests and grasslands, depositing silt-laden waters that replenish soils. When rains recede, waterways concentrate nutrients, drawing large gatherings of herbivores and their predators. In turn, herbivore droppings seed floodplains with grasses and forbs, while predators thin weak individuals, ensuring stronger gene pools. Over decades, wet and dry cycles lead to mosaic landscapes, savanna patches amid woodland, riverine forests lining flood channels. These shifts spark pulses of plant succession. Swamp forests build peat, which over centuries raises the ground, eventually supporting savanna species until another flood resets the stage. Far to the poles, tundra ecosystems perform a subtler balance. The summer thaw reveals meadows of sedge, moss, and wildflower that attract migratory geese and caribou. Predators such as Arctic foxes dine on nesting eggs and fledglings, regulating seabird colonies so eggs don't vanish in weeks of unchecked brood failures. Wolves shadow caribou herds, driving them to browse evenly rather than decimate specific patches of lichened ground cover. Thus, the landscape remains stable, resisting desertification, even in a warming climate. When winter returns, snow blankets the tundra, preserving ground insulation and feeding the next generation's seed banks, so when the thaw comes again, a flush of green signals the cycle's renewal. Throughout these biomes, the unbroken thread is this: nature's checks and balances rely on diversity, disturbance, and adaptation. Predators curb prey numbers, preventing overuse of vegetation. Scavengers and decomposers recycle nutrients, returning carbon and minerals to soils. Plant succession, triggered by disturbances, fire, flood, windthrow, creates shifting mosaics of habitats, each stage offering niche opportunities for different species. Climate cycles, diurnal, seasonal, multi-year govern migrations, breeding, and growth. Each element reinforces the others, a web so intricate that removing one strand unravels the whole. Consider the fabled resilience of Yellowstone's ecosystem after wolf reintroduction. Elk herds, once unchecked, overbrowsed willows along riverbanks, causing banks to erode and beaver populations to collapse. When wolves returned, elk altered their grazing patterns. Riverside willows recovered, beavers built dams again, ponds formed, and songbirds returned. This cascade rippled through the food web, illustrating how a single predator can reshape ecosystems at multiple levels of succession and habitat. In oceanic gyres, plankton cycles illustrate similar feedback. In nutrient-rich upwelling zones, diatom blooms draw carbon from the atmosphere. Their blooms support zooplankton, which feed fish, which feed larger predators, each transfer conserving energy and nutrients. When blooms die back, diatoms sink, sequestering carbon in the deep. No fishing fleets skim this food web bare. Instead, regulators, jellyfish, small sharks, pelagic birds maintain sustainable quotas, letting the ocean breathe in and out in its natural rhythm. Even in microscopic realms, balance abounds. Soil microbes cycle nitrogen and phosphorus, enabling plants to grow. Mycorrhizal fungi connect trees in symbiotic networks, sharing water and nutrients. When plants die, saprophytic fungi and bacteria decompose organic matter, restoring fertility. In ponds and wetlands, algae blooms propel food chains, then collapse, feeding bottom dwellers and releasing nutrients for the next spring's flush. Here, too, predators, dragonfly larvae, water beetles, fish keep grazers in check, ensuring no single group tips the ecosystem into monoculture. Climate shifts, glacial advances, and retreats rewrite the land on geologic timescales. Yet life adapts. As ice sheets recede, pioneer plants, mosses, lichens colonize bare rock, creating soil for grasses and shrubs. Over centuries, forests reclaim former ice margins, flooding the air with birdsong. On ridgelines, alpine meadows bloom briefly, then yield to new timberlines as climate warms. Each succession stage nurtures unique communities, like chapters in Earth's longest story. In imagining a world where human footprints fade to dust, we see the elegance of these self-balancing systems. Predators reign as stewards, their hunts sculpting landscapes. Scavengers and decomposers finish the work, recycling life into soil. Plants follow disturbances in orderly successions, each stage building on the last. Climate rhythms, winds, rains, frosts act as conductors, setting the tempo for migrations, blooms, and dormancy. This is nature's grand ballet, a performance older than any artifice, played on stages from coral reefs to tundra expanses, mesic forests to arid deserts. And as you close your eyes to the rustle of leaves and the distant howl of wolves, remember that balance is not static, but dynamic. It thrives on disturbance and diversity, on predation and renewal, on cycles of growth and decay. In this seamless dance, life endures in every corner, forever in motion, forever in balance. Before the sun lifts its golden edge above the horizon, the world's rivers already hum with motion. From the highest mountain springs to the vast estuaries where fresh water meets the sea, rivers flowing free carve their courses through rock and soil, sculpting landscapes and knitting together ponds, wetlands, and deltas in an unbroken ribbon of vitality. In this untouched realm, no dams stall their surge, no levees confine their meanders, only the eternal interplay of gravity, geology, and water's restless will. Picture a crisp dawn high in the alpine cradle of a great river's birth. Meltwater trickles from glacial snouts, shimmering like liquid crystal across polished rock. The headwaters are a tapestry of small rivulets weaving through lichen-clad stones. Each drop carries dust from millennia of rock grinding, a mineral signature passed down from snow to stream. In these nascent flows, cold and oxygen, rich, trout find refuge among underwater ledges. Stonefly nymphs cling to pebbles, gills fanning in currents born of ice and snow. Here, the river's voice is a rapid murmur, a promise of power to come. As the waters gather, tributaries join like dancers in a ballet, each creek adding volume and character. Over time, cascades leap down granite steps, chanting in thunderous keys. Spray veils cliff faces, polishing moss into emerald carpets. Salamanders bask in mist-warmed pools. Water striders flit across glassy bends. These highland torrents carve deep gorges, the abrupt walls bearing scars of ancient floods and landslides. In the roar and spray, the river sculpts its own canyon cathedral, silent to human ears, yet alive with the chorus of wind, water, and winged life seeking shelter in crevices. Further downstream, the river shifts from tumult to grace. Flowing onto alluvial fans, it spreads wide before settling into a sinuous course across broader valleys. In these middle reaches, gravel bars become islands of sun-baked rock. Willows and cottonwoods take root in nutrient-rich sediment, their roots holding channels in place. Floodplain meadows spring to life at each seasonal crest, fed by clear pulses of fresh water. Here, elk and moose come to graze the tender shoots of sedge. Beavers build lodges in side channels, their lodges shaping wetlands that rise and fall with the river's breath. On warm summer evenings, the river's edges shimmer gold. Dragonflies hover above blooming water lilies. Herons stand motionless in shallow flats, wings folded as they scan for fish. Otters play beneath overhanging banks, sliding down mud ramps into foaming eddies. Turtles bask on logs that roll in the current, then slip unseen below. Each creature interacts with the free-flowing current. No dams to block fish migration, no diversions to dry, marshy coves. Spawning salmon from the ocean sweep upstream in an ancient pilgrimage, leaping over rapids to reach spawning gravel. After they depart, their carcasses feed bears and eagles, who scatter remains into the forest floor, fertilizing trees that will one day shade the river anew. When the rains come, the river swells, breathing life into every side channel. Floodwaters fan out over floodplain forests, depositing layers of silt so fine they form a delicate veneer of fertile soil. Cottonwoods lift their sprouting seeds on winded sails, landing in new mounds of wet sediment. Willows clutch young saplings, anchoring them against the rushing currents. The forest edges blur into marshes, where cattails rise knee-high and reeds bow to the wind. Frogs chorus in watery pools. Muskrats swim beneath lily pads. Muskrat lodges sprout like miniature islands in grassy expanse. The floods bring fish into these wetlands, where they feed heavily before returning to the main channel, leaving eggs on submerged vegetation that will hatch into shimmering fry. In autumn, the river's grasses turn copper and russet, and the air chills. Geese and ducks muster in tight flocks, their calls rising in kaleidoscopic formations as they rest on broad sandbars. Seasons guide their flight along the river highway, following the corridor of water and wetlands to wintering grounds far to the south. Snapping turtles retreat to deeper pools. Amphibians burrow into mud beneath floodplain edges, awaiting the freeze. Bears forage on remaining berries along the floodplain edge, fattening for the long sleep ahead. In the intricate exchange between water and land, every season marks a new chapter, each flood and ebb a catalyst for renewal. Toward the river's end, the valley floor flattens into a broad mosaic of basins and levees. Here, oxbow lakes wink in quiet hollows meanders abandoned as the river courses shift inward. Their waters stand calm, ringed by tule reeds and reflective as polished obsidian. Railbirds, like secretive clapper rails, skulk along the sedge, calling in haunting tones. In the deepest oxbows, alligators warm in winter sun, swinging tails to stir the water and stir dormant crustaceans into motion. When spring's thaw returns, these dead-end lakes reconnect, luring fish and turtles into new zones of life. At last, the river approaches its destiny, the delta, that ever-changing frontier between fresh and salt. Here, sediment carried for hundreds of miles settles in an intricate network of distributary channels. Sand and silt build fan-shaped lobes, creeping into the sea in a testament to the river's perpetual push. Mudflats around the delta host flocks of shorebirds, sandpipers, plovers, avocets probing for crabs and mollusks in the rich benthic stew. In the sheltered channels, mangroves anchor firmly in brackish soils, their tangle of roots providing nurseries for snook, tarpon, and juvenile shrimp. As the tides ebb and flow, they carry nutrient-rich water inland, nourishing marsh grasses that sprawl in vast carpets across the delta plains. In the living arms of the delta, river dolphins weave between branches of submerged trees, reaching beside dappled sunlight. Crocodiles lurk beneath floating vegetation, snapping at unwary fish. Jaguar, moving silently between palm stands, patrol edges of seasonally flooded jungle. In this threshold zone, fish schools surge upriver in silent convoy to spawn, exposing themselves to patiently waiting predators of fin and scale. No commercial trawls cut swaths through these vital nurseries. Life flourishes in natural cycles of deposition and growth. Each wild river is a corridor of resources for migratory species. Fish like salmon and sturgeon, eels and lampreys traverse the full length of the river's domain from cold headwaters to saltwater plains. River otters follow lean trout upriver in spring, moving into mountain gorges to feed on fish flushed by snowmelt. Lumbering manatees grace slow, meandering reaches, grazing on aquatic grasses in warm, shallow bays that scoop the last of fresh water before the ocean. Pools of water in rock depressions, scoured by swirling currents, harbor baby alligators that dart beneath the surface at the slightest shadow. Each species navigates the river's changing moods, rapids, riffles, pools, backwaters, relying on unimpeded flow to reach feeding and spawning grounds. Rivers free of dams also shape human history. In this imagined world devoid of human interference, civilizations would illustrate rivers as lines of life, floodplains sustaining rice terraces, valley farms nourished by flood-deposited silt, cities founded at confluences of navigable waterways. Yet even these human settlements would heed the river's natural regime, building homes on stilts, planting crops in cyclical rotations aligned with floods, and withdrawing power only from wind and muscle, rather than hydroelectric dams. River stewards would know every bend, every shoal, every hidden bar, reading currents as we read maps, living in synchrony with a dynamic watercourse. In the grand scope of continents, major river systems interlock like seams in a living skin. The Amazon in its grand wilderness flows unobstructed through rainforest corridors, creating the world's largest freshwater basin. Its flood pulses fueling floodplain forests second in richness only to the canopy above. The Congo, the Mekong, the Ganges each carries monsoon rains from sky to delta, weaving hydrological tapestries that sustain millions of species and cultures. In this world without dams or diversions, flood pulses remain predictable yet potent, pushing nutrient-laden waters across plains that bloom with lotus. And rice, luring fish that feed flocks of waterbirds on vast inland seas. Across the temperate world, rivers like the Danube and Mississippi, the Rhine and the Yangtze, pulse in wide, meandering loops. Side channels form dense webs of wetlands, oxbow pools, swamps of water lily, marshes dripping with cattails. Beavers queen these realms, building dams that mimic ancient geological fault lines, creating ponds that raise water tables and anchor wooded islands. Their dammed ponds slow floodwaves, sparing downstream valleys from catastrophic pulses, and their lodges provide roosts for herons and perch sites for ospreys that trail fish shoals. In turn, those birds migrate across continents, carrying seeds from riverine willows and poplars to distant shores. As the global climate shifts, rivers free to adapt erase their own sediments in a dance of erosion and deposition. Meanders migrate across valley floors, tracing lazy S-shapes that move over centuries. Narrow gullies open in periods of drought, channeling flash floods when rains return in sudden fury. Sediment pulses from upstream landslides reshape rapids, creating new riffles where trout spawn and mayflies dance in swarms, their emergent wings shimmering like fleeting diamonds. Rivers learn and relearn their courses, a dynamic memory etched in bars and pools, in terraces and floodplain benches. In winter, rivers feeding from glaciated peaks grow ice flows that anchor into banks. Under ice cover, fish retreat to deeper pools where water remains circulatory. Beavers and muskrats build lodges with underwater entrances to escape freezing nights. When spring sun warms the world, ice breaks into ragged flows, surging downstream in thunderous releases, carving new channels and scouring accumulated debris. Each freeze and thaw resets the river's stage, ensuring the cycle of life begins anew. Rivers flowing free are more than channels of water. They are arteries of vitality, connecting mountaintops to the sea, sculptors of canyons, architects of deltas, highways for fish and fowl, refuges for mammals and reptiles, regulators of climate and carbon. Their wild courses spread fertility across continents. Their flood pulses carve wetlands that store water and biodiversity. Their meanders shape soils that feed civilizations. Exposed to no dams or diversions, These rivers sustain life on a grand scale, an orchestration of hydrology and ecology that has played out for eons. As you stand on a riverbank at dusk, listening to the song of water over pebbles, watch a heron lift skyward and feel the gentle pull of currents beneath your feet. Let your hand brush cool, clear flow, tracing the course of a river that knows no barriers. In that moment, understand that rivers belong to no one, they belong to the planet itself, guiding a world of life in unbroken rhythms of movement, renewal, and balance. And as the sun sets, glowing orange on distant hills, the river continues its eternal journey, carving new landscapes, weaving fertile valleys and wetlands, forging deltas that cradle life rivers flowing free, the living arteries of Earth's boundless wild. Imagine the first light spilling across endless seas of grass, each blade tipped with dew that glints like a trillion tiny stars. The horizon stretches without road or fence, a living ocean of green, undulating under a vast sky. Here no plow has turned the soil, no crops line tidy rows. Instead, wind, fire, and the steady grazing of great herds have shaped this landscape for millennia, crafting a world perpetually in motion, yet rooted in ancient rhythms. On the temperate plains, the grasslands awaken to the soft rustle of prairie dogs emerging from burrow towns. Their high-pitched yips echo in cylindrical warrens etched into the earth by generations of tunneling. A family of badgers slips silently from the shadows, nose to the ground, following faint scent trails of ground squirrels. Overhead, a red-tailed hawk glides in thermal currents, scanning for movement below. In the grassland's mosaic of mounds and holes, life thrives in myriad forms, each species playing its part in a web unbroken by human hands. As the sun climbs, bison herds drift across the prairie like living dunes. Their dark backs rise and fall with grass swells, each massive step churning soil and releasing buried seeds. Calves gambol at their mothers' sides, learning the herd's migratory dance. When rainstorms release sudden torrents, bison plunge into knee-deep puddles, reveling in the mud that soothes insect bites. As they move, they fertilize the land with dung, launching new sprouts of buffalo grass, bluestem, and wildflowers that paint the plains in seasonal bursts of color. Where grass gives way to oak savannas, fire's silent touch renews the land. Lightning-struck oaks sometimes crack and fall, but instead of leaving rot and decay, their charred trunks mark the path of low-intensity burns that sweep through on dry winds. These fires smoldering rather than raging clear accumulated thatch open spaces for sunlight to reach the soil and stimulate fire-adapted grasses to sprout anew. Deep root systems of big bluestem and Indian grass respond within days, forging a lush carpet that sustains grazers and stabilizes soils against erosion. In Africa's savannas, the golden glow of dawn reveals wildebeest calving grounds. Thousands of animals mill near waterholes, calves wobbling in pursuit of new strength. These gatherings draw migratory birds, storks, and pelicans into floating flocks on seasonal rivers. Lions awaken from nighttime rest in tall grass, stretching regal limbs before setting out to patrol pride territories. Their roars, carried across the dry air, confirm that apex predators maintain herd health by culling the sick and weak, ensuring the cycle of life continues undisturbed by human alteration. On the Patagonian pampas, guanacos graze in slender columns under winds that whistle across open land. These camelids nibble on coarse tussocks, their padded feet leaving soft prints in the loose soil. When startled, they bound away in graceful leaps, their reddish flanks blending with the sunburnt grasses. Armadillos scratch among the roots, plucking insects from hidden galleries. In this vast expanse, no ranch fences confine movements. Instead, the pampas themselves guide the ebb and flow of populations, as animals follow the water in the green flush left by winter rains. Further north, the Eurasian steppe spreads like a green wave from Ukraine through Mongolia. Saiga antelope cluster in wary groups, their bulbous noses filtering dust from wind-blown grass stalks. Steppe eagles perch on termite mounds, scanning for marmots that flit near burrow entrances. The grass here is coarse and drought, tolerant, yet in spring it explodes into blooms of dainty wildflowers, pink tulips, yellow scabiosa, blue irises each petal, a testament to life's persistence in the face of desert winds. Speaking of deserts, beyond the steppes lie zones of aridity where grasses give way to hardy shrubs and succulents. Yet even here, animals shape the landscape. Kangaroos bound across Australia's mulga shrublands, their powerful legs compressing seeds into the soil. Spinifex grasses recover swiftly from trampling, their spiky stems scattering in the breeze. No sheep grazing pressures these lands. Instead, kangaroos and wallabies nibble selectively, fostering a patchwork of growth that shelters insects and reptiles in the spaces between. In North America's Sonoran Desert, the saguaro cactus stands sentinel. Its crested arms reach toward the sky, pillars carved by centuries of wind and sun. Pack rats build spiny dens beneath these giants, weaving twigs and cactus spines into sturdy lodges. Desert tortoises dig burrows to escape midday heat, emerging at dawn and dusk to graze on brittle grasses and flowering ocotillos. When rare monsoonal rains arrive, life rushes into bloom. Desert lily unfurl, palo verde leaves shine bright green, and antelope jackrabbits frolic among puddles of moisture. On the shifting dunes of the Sahara, camels tread ancient caravan routes etched by trade winds. Their padded feet glide over sands that ripple like golden waves. In the cool hours of dawn, fennec foxes emerge from dens, ears alert to skittering gerbils beneath the dune slopes. Scorpions and beetles patrol under the moon, their nocturnal lives untouched by road or pipeline. When jade torrents carve ephemeral rivers after rare storms, desert gardens bloom in oases that nourish camels and invite migratory birds to rest their wings. Across the vast Mojave, Joshua trees rise as sculpted sentinels. Their spiny leaves glint under midday sun, and bighorn sheep navigate rocky outcrops between sparse waterholes. Creosote bushes scent the air with resin that captures wind-blown moisture. Nighttime chill brings owls to sand-anchored pinon pines, their calls echoing off granite boulders. The desert's silence is alive with the scratch of reptile scales on hot sand and the hush of grasses rippling in brief breezes. In the Patagonian desert, Mara rodents dart beneath stunted shrubs. Flamingos wheel over salt flats, their curved beaks filtering brine shrimp. Fires, ignited only by lightning, dance across grass islands, leaving stripes of blackened earth that green again in crisp rains. Puma trails cross these spaces, their rosetted coats blending with tawny sands as they hunt guanacos at dawn. The wind sweeps dunes into towering ripples, shaping ephemeral landscapes that drift across plains in slow motion. On the edge of the Gobi, dunes of chromium yellow shift under scorching sun. Bactrian camels graze on cold hardy shrubs. Endangered Gobi bears forage in riparian strips, fed by melting snows from the Tian Shan. Shadows of vultures glide overhead, their silent circuits scanning for carcasses left by foxes. In deep winter snows, these lands transform. Freezing fog coats creosote, and groupings of drought-adapted grasses stand anchored under white blankets, awaiting spring's thaw. In the African Namib, Welwitschia plants living fossils stretch their bizarre leaves across gravel plains. Oryx march in stately columns to ephemeral pans, their white markings dazzling in the sun. When coastal fog rolls in, fog weavers build webs in tussock grasses, drawing moisture from minute droplets. The desert, far from barren, hums with life adapted to extremes, each species a living poem to survival without human intervention. Through all these grasslands and deserts, wind reigns as silent sculptor. Dust clouds carve silhouettes on sunset skies. Sand grains dance across landscapes in miniature saltation. forging ripples and dunes that shift over years. Aeolian deposits accumulate behind rocks, naturally reinforcing microhabitats where pioneer plants cling to life, stabilizing soils against full desertification. Seeds travel on wind currents, finding new niches across miles of open land. Fire, too, carries duality, destroyer and creator. In grasslands, periodic burns clear invasive shrubs, recycle nutrients, and maintain the dominance of fire-adapted grasses. Species like the giant kangaroo rat in North American deserts time their breeding to post-fire flushes of vegetation, banking on new growth to feed their young. In Africa, frequent fires synchronize with herbivore movements, creating patchworks of fresh grass that guide wildebeest migrations across the Serengeti, a living flow of life authored by flame and foot. Grazing animals are architects of these realms. Elephants in savanna corridors strip acacia bark, opening glades that invite grazing ungulates. Their footprints in mud holes become watering sites for birds and insects. Horses in the Mongolian steppe graze selectively, shaping grass height and stability. Bison wallows create ephemeral marshes. Camels dig for dew-soaked roots that nourish desert soils. Their movement patterns disperse seeds and dung, fostering plant diversity that in turn sustains herbivore populations. Predator and prey cycles complete the picture. Cheetahs in open grasslands drive gazelle behavior, creating selection pressures for speed and agility that ripple through generations. Wolves in steppe regions regulate wild horse herds, preventing overgrazing of grasses that would harden soils and reduce water infiltration. Raptors, eagles, and vultures monitor these open spaces. They're scavenging, cleaning carcasses, and returning nutrients to Earth in cycles as old as life itself. In the pulse of seasons, grasslands and deserts dance to ancient tunes. Spring rains transform arid basins into carpets of desert lily. Goldenrods flame the tundra's edges. Summer's heat waves bake soils, yet stallions and stallion-hooved antelope press onward, scratching for moisture beneath grasses steeped in morning dew. Autumn winds strip foliage from shrubs, scattering seeds onto bare ground. Winter frost seals the land in quiet, but life simmers beneath snowdrifts, roots storing energy for the flush to come. Without agriculture's hand, soils remain living membranes. Carbon stored in deep grassroots cycles through humus layers as grazing and natural decay enrich topsoils. Desert crusts biological mixtures of bacteria, fungi, and moss stabilize soils against wind erosion, capturing moisture in sparse rains. As animals trample and graze, they aerate earth, facilitate germination, and keep nutrient cycles unbroken. From pole to pole, these unbroken grasslands and deserts embody the planet's resilience. No tilled fields intercept rivers. No irrigation canals redirect monsoon floods. Instead, life thrives in tandem with nature's most primal forces. Wind that sculpts dune and dust, fire that thins and renews, grazers that churn and fertilize. Each ecosystem pulses with an energy older than any city or farm, alive with the promise that wild landscapes can endure when left to their own devices. As twilight falls on this boundless earth, a lone antelope silhouette emerges atop a dune rim. It stands for a heartbeat, ears attuned to nightfall's first stirrings before bounding into darkness. Somewhere, an owl pulses through desert groves. On the plains, a lion calls beneath a sky unmarked by contrails. In this living cathedral of grass and sand, the balance of wind, fire, and hoof persists an endless continuum where nature's original architects continue their relentless work, crafting landscapes that sing of freedom, endurance, and timeless beauty. At first light, you stand atop a ridge carved by ancient ice. Beneath your boots lies a U-shaped valley whose steep walls tell of glaciers that once ground their way down from high peaks. In this untouched world, no roads or cities block their path. Instead, great rivers of ice continue their slow dance, scouring mountains and depositing till in sprawling moraines. As you watch, a small river of meltwater trickles from beneath the glacier's snout, cutting a ribbon of glass through the fractured rock. Dusty silts swirl in its current, minerals ground fine. Beneath, moving ice promising new soils where plants will one day take root. Here, at the interface of ice and stone, Earth's icy breath carves landscapes with patience and power. Moving lower, you trace the glacial outwash plain, where kettles and eskers form a miniature topography all their own. In spring, meltwater pulses flush channels across gravel bars, reshaping them hour by hour. Pools collect in depressions, becoming nurseries for amphibians and feeding grounds for migratory ducks. No dams hold back this flood, no levees confine its flow. Instead, the water spreads freely, nourishing willow thickets and tamarack swamps that fringe the plain. In autumn, when nights frost over these wetlands, the ice seals life as treasures, within winter as vault, an insurance policy for spring as resurrection. Rising upward again, you reach the cirque where the glacier clamps tight against granite walls. Every crease in the rock striations, chatter mark speaks of thousands of years of ice dragging rock dormers from the peaks above. Beneath the cirque, a tarn glows an impossible blue, fed by snowmelt that fills its basin each summer. Its waters reflect the sky and the soaring ridges beyond, where bergschrons gape like open jaws. In a world without highways or cities, these remote mountain sculptures remain pristine, their forms forever shifting as climate warms or cools, as glaciers advance and retreat in endless cycles. Descend now into a broad alpine valley and listen for Earth's deeper heartbeat. Far beneath your feet, the tectonic plates grind against one another, storing energy like a coiled spring. Across continents and oceans, these forces shape volcanoes' magma chambers that pulse with molten rock and gas. You feel it first as a low tremor, a subtle vibration beneath bare earth, rising to a gentle rumble that resonates in rock crevices. Without cities to muffle its sound, the land itself speaks in seismic voices. Ancient faults, awakened by plate shifts or the unloading weight of melting ice, slip and release small quakes that ripple across valleys, reminding you that the ground is never truly still. In the distance, a volcanic cone stands sentinel on a collapsed flank of a mountain range. Its summit glows faintly with the promise of fire to come. At night, steam rises in shimmering pillars, condensing into threads of mist that drift across saddleback ridges. In daylight, fumaroles hiss with sulphurous breath, painting vent walls in ochre and rust. Here, where no highways obstruct the view, you watch as the earth exhales, venting pressure built over centuries. If magma surges, rivers of lava may flow down the volcano's flanks uninterrupted, sculpting new plateaus and fertilizing soils with fresh mineral wealth. Over centuries, these volcanic soils will host forests of pine and alder, their roots anchoring fresh rock in living green. Venture east to a vast river plain, and you find it lined by chains of cinder cones, remnants of fire drawn up from the deep. In the black basalt fields between, you walk corridors of lava tubes, where the roofs of old flows have collapsed to form skylights. Without cities to seal their entrances, these tubes remain open, trapping cool air that shelters rare bats and cave-adapted invertebrates. In the warm season, birds dive into the tube's entrances to escape the desert sun. And if an eruption renews the flow, the lava will surge once more, carving new labyrinths beneath the earth in a slow but unstoppable advance. Turning your gaze to a broad subduction zone, you travel to an island arc where volcanoes rise like beacons above the sea. Each peak has its own character. Some shield volcanoes roll upward in gentle slopes, their basalt flows fanning outward in sheets. Others are stratovolcanoes steep and jagged, built of alternating layers of ash and lava that whisper of explosive histories. Without human settlements to encroach, these volcanic islands remain laboratories of ecology. Birds nest on rocky coasts carved by steam and sulfur. Ferns colonize fresh ash, their spores wafted by trade winds to new slopes. In time, forests reclaim the cones, their trees stained with mineral salts that enrich leaf litter across the islands. Back on the continents, you find earthquakes' raw artistry in mountain ranges bent and buckled by plate collisions. Highways, buildings, and tunnels in a world with cities require engineering to survive these tremors. Here in the wild, rockfalls and landslides reshape slopes on each strong tremor, sliding thousands of tons of debris down ravines, planting new talus fields where pioneer plants will colonize loose rock. Over time, rivers flush this material downstream, creating alluvial fans that spread rich sediments far from the high peaks. No dams block these rivers. No towns lie in their path. The fans grow in silent testimony to nature's cycles of upheaval and renewal. Return to the polar realms, and you feel the interplay of ice and fire most keenly. In places like Iceland, glaciers cloak active volcanoes. Beneath the ice, magma erupts explosively, melting ice to trigger catastrophic floods, dew clouds that roar across river channels with walls of water and ice, sweeping boulders and reshaping river valleys in minutes. In a world without roads snapped by floodwaters, these floods expand gravel beds that later host islands of pioneer vegetation. Lakes form where ice dams stall outflow, becoming breeding grounds for Arctic terns and black guillemots once the waters calm. The glacier's veneer hides the fire within. The volcano's heart pulses beneath the ice's weight, and together they craft landscapes of stark beauty. In the temperate latitudes, after a glacial retreat, mountains experience isostatic rebound. The land, once weighted by kilometers of ice, begins to rise again once the ice melts away. Rivers change course as gradients shift. Waterfalls spring into existence where none existed. Shorelines shift as land lifts relative to sea level. Islands emerge from the shallows, their fresh bedrock colonized by lichens and mosses that will begin the soil formation process. Without cities blocking their emergence, these islands grow in solitude, hosting unique assemblages of plants and birds shaped by isolation. Volcanic fire, too, responds to glacial changes. Studies in places like Patagonia and Iceland show that removing the weight of ice can depressurize magma chambers or, conversely, lessen overlying pressure and trigger eruptions. In a world without melting water reservoirs or hydroelectric dams, this process runs unchecked. Volcanoes once thought dormant can awaken as ice retreats in a warming climate, drawing steam columns high into the sky, darkening horizons with ash, and blanketing wide areas in pumice and tuff. Yet in this wild world, no ash-laden cities choke in the sky. Instead, the land endures the blast, forests regrow on pyroclastic slopes, and rivers flush away ashes to magma-enriched deltas. Along transformed faults, those silent lines where plates slip past one another, the earth quakes with regularity. In the presence of cities, these are disasters, collapsing buildings, and severing utilities. Here, in the absence of human infrastructure, faults breathe in seismic murmurs. Valleys open and close gently over centuries. Ridges offset by meters become natural curiosities for future explorers. In time, landslides in steep canyon walls drop trees into shifting streams, damming them temporarily until waters carve anew. Each quake is a punctuation in Earth's ever-unfolding story, righting misalignments and creating new vistas on which life will rediscover itself. Imagine then this world of ice and fire enfolded in the silence of unconstrained nature. Glaciers sculpt mountains. Volcanic fire builds them anew. Earthquakes reshape the ground at fault lines. Each process interweaves with the others. Glacial unloading triggers both rebound and volcanic eruptions. Volcanic ash fertilizes soils for post-fire forests. Earthquakes fracture the rock, the rivers then erode. Landscapes stand not as static backdrops, but as ever-moving palimpsests of ice's advance and retreat, of magma's rise and floodwaters surge, of rocks fracture and soils bloom. And through it all, life adapts and thrives. Alpine flowers carpet moraines, feeding mountain goats that forage undisturbed. Cold-tolerant mosses colonize volcanic cinders, entombing spirits of eruptions within their green mats. Salmon navigate glacial rivers to spawn in headwater streams. Their bodies, carried downstream in death, feed bears and ravens. Each living thing reads the geological signs where ice once lay, where lava once flowed, where quake cracks now channel springs. Evolution shapes organisms to flow with these changes, just as rivers carve bedrock to new forms. So stand in solitude on a barren ridge where ancient ice has gouged a pass. Watch steam plume from a hidden crater and feel the land tremor in a distant quake. Here, without a city in sight, the raw forces of ice and fire shape Earth's face anew with each season, each century, each millennium. The world is alive with motion, sculpted by glaciers that melt and carve, by volcanoes that erupt and rebuild, by earthquakes that crack and remold. In their endless interplay, they remind us that Earth is not a static home, but a living, breathing planet, a dynamic stage where ice and fire write the story of landscapes unbound by human artifice. The valley exhales as daylight retreats, a final sigh of warmth drifting off the ridges in wisps of golden mist. In that moment of hush, when the last firefly winks its fading glow, the night unfolds like a velvet curtain across the sky. No hum of traffic, no distant engines, only the breath of wind through pine needles and the soft cadence of crickets beginning their evening chorus. In this world unbroken by human touch, darkness is not empty. It is alive, vibrating with life's nocturnal symphony. At first, you hear the rustle of leaves, a soft murmur as small mammals scurry through underbrush mice and voles foraging for seeds, rabbits padding along hidden trails. Their movement is a low undercurrent, barely more than a whisper against the earth. Above, a gentle breeze stirs grasses in a meadow, each blade bending and unbending in a silent wave. Beneath that, the choir of crickets swells, 1,000 tiny wings brushing in unison, creating an enveloping hum that feels like water flowing through fields of shadow. Then comes the owl's call, a single, cavernous hoo-hoo, resonant with ancient purpose. In the dim arc of moonlight, large eyes glint as the great horned owl perches on a bare branch, head swiveling to catch the faintest rustle below. Each beat of its silent wings is a measured note in the night's composition. A second owl answers in echo, farther down the ridge, so distant that its voice floats across the valley like a drifting cloud. Between those calls, the air holds a stillness so deep it seems almost tactile, as if the forest itself pauses to listen. As the owls converse, another voice rises, the howl of wolves. From a ridge beyond the tree line, a lone wolf lifts its muzzle and lets loose a call that shivers through the darkness. It's a song of longing and belonging, a signal carried on cool air to kin miles away. A chorus responds in kind, voices layering in harmony and dissonance, some rising on a high, haunting pitch, others low and guttural. The pack's voices tell stories of the hunt, the call of the young, the reassurance of numbers. Though you cannot see them, you feel their presence as palpably as if they paced at your feet. Below the wolves' echoes, the meadow's insect choir shifts. Katydids join in with their rhythmic rasp, each wing stroke a deer in nature's machine. Cicadas hum like distant engines, rising and falling in waves. Rain beetles hum low and steady near damp earth, punctuating the higher pitches with a bass note. Somewhere, a katydid trills in a cascade of rapid-fire chirrups, so fast that it sounds like a gentle rain tapping on leaves. The insects blend into a living drone that seems to pulse in time with your heartbeat. Out on the water's edge, frogs add their voices to the mix, Bullfrogs bellow with deep, resonant croaks that roll across ponds like gongs. Chorus frogs trill in tight-knit clusters, their calls overlapping in patterns of call and response. Toads rasp in shorter bursts, as if laughing in the dark. The reflections of stars skitter across the water's surface, shimmering in time with each amphibian note. In their croaks and croons, they speak of life under the moon, of water's embrace and the secrets of damp reeds. Farther up on rocky ledges, bats emerge in silent flutter. Their wings, shaped like dusk itself, carve arcs in the night sky as they hunt the aerial insects drawn to lamp-like patches of starlight. You hear them as high-pitched squeak sonar pulses that race through the air, inaudible until they linger on the edges of hearing. Each squeak rebounds off invisible walls of trees and rocks, guiding wings to their prey in a dance of sound and shadow. In open grasslands beyond the forest's edge, the wind picks up, racing across rolling hills where the tall grasses stand in rows like waves. The grasses whisper against one another, a low susurration that underlies the entire nightscape. In the distance, prairie dogs call in short, staccato barks. Coyotes answer with yips and yelps, their voices weaving a tapestry of wild laughter and lament. Under the vault of stars, herds of antelope silhouette against the skyline, ghostly shapes grazing in moonlight, their hooves scarcely touching the ground. Looking up, the Milky Way spills across the sky in a river of soft white haze, dotted with pinpricks of distant suns. Shooting stars streak down in brief arcs of fire, leaving wispy tails that flicker and fade. Constellations Cygnus, Orion, the Southern Cross stand as silent sentinels, their patterns unchanged across centuries of nights like this one. No city lights drown their glow. No satellites break the dome's pristine sweep. The constellations arc overhead, guiding nocturnal travelers just as they have for millennia. A little moon rises, pale and wan, its light washing the forest floor with silver. Under its glow, a bobcat pads through leaf litter, tail held aloft in fluid elegance. Its ears swivel, catching the faintest movement as it hunts for rodents among ferns. When it pauses, you see the luminous reflection of moonlight in its eyes, twin lanterns in the gloom. Its presence is an echo of silent footfalls, a reminder that predators roam under the cover of night, balancing prey and predator in endless cycles. A breeze carries music from rippling reeds along a stream, where water cascades over smooth stones in a continual whisper. The trickle and rush of water harmonize with the forest's voices, lending texture to the night's score. In eddies and pools, lanternflies glowworms drift in gentle arcs, blinking soft green lights that mirror stars above. Their dance is so slow, so deliberate, that each light feels like an ember floating on water, illuminating the tinted curves of undercut banks. On distant cliffs, ravens croak once before settling into crags. Their deep, throaty voices punctuate the scene, ancestral calls that echo through rocky corridors. Below them, pine squirrels chatter in rapid alarm when a shadow of owl wings passes overhead. In that exchanging of warnings and responses, the creatures of the night stay in constant communication, each voice part of a vast network of survival. In broad meadows at the heart of night, solitary whippoorwills call in relentless repetition. Whip poor will, whip poor will. Their notes carry across starlit grasses, slow and mournful, yet comforting in their constancy. Fireflies swarm in drifting clouds, their flickers marking invisible trails through tall stalks. Moths spiral toward those lights, wings brushing the air in slow beats, their fuzzy bodies casting feather-soft shadows on dew-wade flowers. Touch a blade of grass and feel its cool surface, still wet from dew. Breathe deeply and taste the night air minerals from distant rocks, resin from pine needles, the faint tang of water swirling through roots. Every inhalation ties you closer to the wild, untamed world. Here, in the absence of human hustle, You find yourself a guest in a realm governed by sound and silence, by wing beat and creature call, by wind and water and flame of starlight. Eventually, a chorus of tree frogs erupts, filling the night with a chorus so thick it seems to vibrate in your bones. Their calls are a call to attention, a crescendo that rises and falls like a storm of tiny voices. In their swirling cadence, you feel the pulse of unbroken nights, timed by the planet's rotation, by the tilt of Earth's axis, by the path of the moon through the sky. The frog's chorus merges into the timbre of crickets, the low hum of katydids, the distant wolf howl and owl hoot, until all voices blend into one living breath. Slowly, the chorus subsides, retreating into quartets and duets. A lone whippoorwill calls once more. The wolf's howls fade into lonely echoes. The owl's final call reverberates against the trees. With that fading, the night breathes out, and calm returns deep, enveloping calm, as if the world were holding its breath in that perfect moment between dawn and darkness. And in that silence that follows, you hear the slightest shift, the tremble of the earth as an insect crawls across bark, the gentle flutter of moth wings stirring the air, the soft trickle of a distant spring. Those whispers remind you that life never truly sleeps. It only sings in different keys when the sun falls away. In this night unmarked by human intrusion, you are surrounded by a living song, a tapestry of voices older than any language, woven from the threads of wind through grass, the drop of dew on leaf, the calls of creatures born to darkness. As dawn's first glow approaches, the nocturnal singers begin to fade. Crickets slow their rhythm, frogs hush their chorus, owls vanish into daytime roosts. The wolves' final howls drift eastward, answering last calls of distant kin. In the soft blue light of pre-dawn, a bird stirs, a thrush or a robin, its song a tentative bridge between night's quiet symphony and morning as bright overture. Standing in that liminal hour, you carry with you the memory of night's full chorus, owls' resonant calls, wolves' haunting howls, insects' tireless hum, frogs' jubilant croaks, bats' swift sonar, winds whisper through leaves, waters murmur over stones, the silent pulse of stars. In a world where night belongs solely to natural voices, each soundscape is a rare gift, a living poem and a testament to wilderness unbroken. And as sunrise warms the land and creatures of the day take their places, you know that night's songs will rise again, an endless cycle of sound at the edge of darkness and light. Imagine a world in which the human chapter of Earth's story never began, no cities clustering on riverbanks, no roads cleaving through forests, no farms fanning out in neat squares. In that vast expanse of uninterrupted wilderness, life would chart its own course, unshaped by our footprints or our selective breeding. Animals and plants would follow the laws of natural selection alone, adapting over millennia in ways both familiar and astonishing. Without our interference, evolution would be guided solely by climate swings, competition, predation, and chance mutations, a tapestry woven by time in patterns we have only begun to glimpse. High on the mountaintops where snowfields melt into clear streams, trout species would diversify into isolated lake refugia. Without dams blocking their passage, populations would ebb and flow with glacial advances and retreats, giving rise to distinct lineages in each cirque lake. Some trout would evolve into bright-flanked specialists, feeding on unique insect nymphs that thrive in moss-lined pools. Others would develop deeper bodies and stronger pectoral fins to navigate swift torrents, their genes fine-tuned to cold, oxygen-rich waters. Where rivers braid across floodplains, these fish would recolonize side channels each spring, their spawning runs timed precisely to floods, rather than altered irrigation schedules. Down in the grasslands, large herbivores, bison, antelope, and elephants would roam in numbers far greater than today's remnant herds. Their constant grazing would sculpt a dynamic mosaic of grass heights and compositions. Some grasses would adapt by growing closer to the ground, evading the teeth of bulk feeders. Others would evolve tougher, silica-reinforced blades to resist trampling, their seeds spreading only when carried by hoofprints into nutrient-rich wallows. Predators like wolves, cheetahs, and lions would each carve out their own niches. Wolves pursuing endurance hunts across icy plateaus, cheetahs honing explosive sprints to catch fleet pronghorns, lions mastering the ambush among acacia shadows. The resulting predator-prey dances would drive remarkable adaptations: wolves with deeper chests for long chases, cheetahs with enhanced muscular lactic acid tolerance, lions with patterned coats that blend seamlessly into light and shadow. In the temperate forests, oaks and maples would form deep, multi-layered canopies, their succession orchestrated by the unbroken cycles of wind-thrown treefalls and natural fires. Pioneer species like birches would colonize open gaps, sending up slender trunks that reach for sunflecks among mature crowns. In turn, understory plant trilliums, ferns, and wild ginger would develop shade-tolerance traits, optimizing chlorophyll composition for dim light. Herbivores such as deer would pressure tree seedlings to evolve chemical defenses, leading to trees that produce complex tannins and resins. In response, insect herbivores like gypsy moths and sawflies would diversify enzymes to neutralize these chemicals, spawning new species that specialize on narrow host ranges. On islands separated by shifting seas, the absence of human-introduced rats and cats would allow flightless birds to diversify much more freely. In one archipelago, you might find parrots that walk as readily as they fly, their wings reduced over generations in predator-free forests. In another, rails would adapt elongated legs for sprinting across grassy islets, eschewing flight entirely. Seed-eating finches would evolve a spectrum of beak shapes, from stout, nut-cracking bills to slender, nectar-robbing tongues, each perfectly matched to the local flora. Plant species on these islands would coevolve accordingly. Flowers would shape their corollas to match the gape of unique bird pollinators. Fruits would thicken skins to entice brown foraging frugivores, and seeds would sprout only after passing through the digestive tracts of specific bird species. In the coral reefs that fringe those islands, reef-building corals themselves would undergo remarkable shifts. Without the stresses of dredging, runoff, or aquarium collection, corals would adapt to fluctuating sea levels and temperature swings by forming hybrid lineages. Heat-tolerant symbiotic algae strains would emerge within polyps, enabling corals to thrive on shallow slopes under intense sunlight. Deep-water coral species would extend their ranges upward, trailing cooler currents into upper reef faces, creating new habitats for spiny urchins and brittle stars that in turn graze algal overgrowth. Predatory fish reef sharks, groupers, lionfish analogues would fine-tune their sensory systems to hunt in ever more complex labyrinths of coral branches, their teeth reflecting the geometry of their favored prey. In the great deserts, plants would adapt to extremes of moisture and temperature without human irrigation. Cacti and succulent relatives might evolve deeper water storage tissues, their stomata opening only at night for maximal water conservation. Desert grasses would develop root networks extending tens of meters underground to tap ephemeral aquifers, while ephemeral wildflowers, poppies, desert asters, annual phlox would refine their seed bank strategies to germinate within hours of rare rains. Small mammals, kangaroo rats, gerbils, desert mice would coevolve kidneys capable of extracting every molecule of moisture from seeds, their loamy cheek pouches carrying water-rich food back to subterranean burrows. No agricultural fields would break this pattern. Instead, life cycle would hinge solely on unpredictable cloudbursts and soil crusts intact to hold moisture. In tropical rainforests, canopy trees would reach heights pushing into the clouds. Without timber extraction, these emergents would grow even taller, bolstered by buttressed roots and extra strong lignin. Lianas would twine tighter around trunks, evolving thicker vines to resist being broken by aerial herbivores. Flowering trees would adapt to feed specialized pollinators. Hawk moths with 30-centimeter proboscises. Bats that navigate by moonlight reflections. Ants that farm extrafloral nectaries. On the forest floor, leaf litter would accumulate in deeper mats, nurturing diverse fungal networks that exchange nutrients with plant roots. In these mycorrhizal realms, tree species would broadcast seeds that sprout only under dense fungal mats, a strategy lost in logged forests, but thriving in uninterrupted growth. Up on the tundra, moss and lichen mats would persist in great expanses, their growth regulating soil temperatures beneath permafrost. Grazing herbivores like caribou would track the northern flush of green mosses, their hooves compacting snow-covered crusts to expose edible plants. Predators, wolves, and bears would follow these migrations in patterns unchanged for tens of thousands of years. In warmer interglacial phases, pockets of birch and willow would fringe the tundra, evolving cold-tolerant dwarf forms. Their dwarfism would become more pronounced over time, a testament to the relentless chill-sculpting branches that hug the ground to escape biting winds. In freshwater wetlands, reeds and sedges would form vast marshes, their fibers weaving dense rhizome mats that stabilize soils. Amphibians, frogs, salamanders would exploit hidden channels, spawning in labyrinthian pools. Without drainage for farms, waterfowl, like geese, swans, and ducks would nest abundantly, shaping plant communities by cropping shoots and fertilizing wetlands. In the nightly hush, fireflies would gather along marsh margins, their light patterns intensifying to attract mates in brilliant Morse code displays. In response, nocturnal predators, spiders, bats, nightjars, would refine sensory adaptations to hunt these glowing insects with pinpoint accuracy. On the broader scale of continents, biogeographic barriers would shift with climate cycles, spurring waves of speciation. Mountain ranges dividing moisture lowlands from drier plateaus would act as long-term laboratories of divergence. Over millions of years, small mammals, rodents, shrews would radiate into myriad genera, some developing gliding membranes to cross canopy gaps, others digging complex burrow systems to escape predators. Birds would diversify into hawk-like raptors, nocturnal owls, and diurnal birds of paradise. Each lineage evolving courtship displays unimaginable in today's fragmented habitats. Perhaps most profound of all would be the unchecked persistence of living fossils, species that today teeter on the brink. Coelacanths in deep ocean caves would continue unchanged in their shadowy domains. Ginkgo trees, unpruned by forestry, would scatter seeds by wind across limestone bluffs, sprouting new groves untouched by pollution. Horseshoe crabs would spawn in still, pristine beaches, their blue blood fueling dense populations of hatchling larvae that feed migrating shorebirds along centuries-old flyways. In this grand mosaic of untrammeled evolution, the very concept of invasive species vanishes. Each ecosystem crafts its own check and balance. Predators keep herbivores in check. Competitors limit the range of dominance. And mutualists, frugivores, and pollinators bind plants into intricate life cycles. Disease vectors coevolve with host defenses, preventing runaway outbreaks. Genetic diversity flourishes as populations expand and contract with natural climatic vacillations rather than human-driven habitat loss. As you gaze across this imagined Earth continent's humming with unbroken wilderness, you glimpse evolution in its purest form. No hand of man has pruned or guided these adaptations. No fences have confined migration. No chemical cocktails have altered genetic courses. Instead, the grand arc of life continues to bend toward complexity, resilience, and wonder, an endless unfolding of adaptations written in the language of genes, molded by the forces of sun, wind, rain, fire, and snow. In this world without us, evolution writes new chapters every day, crafting forms of life more diverse, more specialized, and more breathtaking than any we have yet known. Imagine gazing down from space on a planet swathed in swirling whites and deep blues, where continents float like gems in an endless ocean, and no trace of cities or smoke plumes mars the horizon. The atmosphere glows a gentle azure, rich in oxygen, nitrogen, and just enough carbon dioxide to cradle life in warm embrace. Winds aloft trace patterns of sunlight and shadow, guiding clouds in sinuous rhythms that repeat each day without fail. In this world unclaimed by industry, the grand machinery of climate operates on its ancient automations. No factories to warm the air, no ships to stir the seas, only the raw forces of sun, sea, and sky shaping weather and climate in seamless harmony. Beneath the vault of sky, the greenhouse effect proceeds by nature's own design. Solar radiation bathes Earth in energy, some reflecting off pale deserts and bright ice, the rest penetrating to warm land and water. Water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and other natural gases trap a portion of that warmth, preventing it from radiating back to space too swiftly. Volcanoes breathe out pulses of carbon and ash, while rock and soil, through weathering and chemical reactions, slowly lock carbon away for eons. The result is a planetary thermostat, dialed by slow geologic processes that maintain temperatures within ranges that foster seas of life. Water itself is climate's great moderator. Evaporation from oceans, lakes, and forests draws latent heat upward, cooling surfaces and feeding clouds that drift aloft before spilling rains on distant lands. Those rains replenish rivers and aquifers, sustaining vegetation that absorbs sunlight for photosynthesis. No agricultural irrigation canals reroute this flow. Instead, the water cycle moves freely, driven only by pressure gradients and the embrace of gravity. Over continents, monsoon winds gather moisture offshore and release it in epic downpours, carving valleys and nourishing floodplain forests that stand anchored to soil and stream. The oceans, covering over 70% of the surface, are the hidden engine of climate stability. Their vast thermal capacity soaks up excess heat during summer and releases it over winter, smoothing seasonal extremes. Warm currents like the Gulf Stream carry tropical heat toward higher latitudes, thawing shores that would otherwise lie icebound. In turn, cold currents plunge southward, supplying nutrients to sunlit waters and fueling blooms of plankton. This global conveyor belt of temperature and salinity flows unimpeded, its pulse set by differences in water density, rather than the wake of cargo vessels. High in the troposphere, air masses organize themselves into giant cells Hadley, Ferrel, and polar-driving trade winds, westerlies, and polar easterlies. In the tropics, warm air rises at the equator, powering thunderstorms that tower like living cathedrals. It cools aloft, descends in subtropical highs, and fans out toward the poles. These circulation patterns dictate the placement of deserts and rainforests alike. Without aerosols from smokestacks or airplane contrails to seed clouds unnaturally, cloud formation follows pure physical laws, droplet by droplet, forming from saline spray, dust, and pollen. Seasonal rhythms deepen this dance. Land masses heat and cool more rapidly than oceans, creating monsoonal shifts that sweep across South Asia, West Africa, and Australia. These rains drive ecosystems, from parched scrublands blooming in a fortnight to swamps swelling into labyrinthine wetlands. With no levees or dams to blunt the monsoon's pulse, fertile plains cycle between flood and drought in perfect cadence. Sandbars emerge and vanish in river mouths, and migratory animals time their breeding to water's ebb and flow. Yet natural variability adds layers to stability. El Niño Southern Oscillation, ENSO, unfolds in the Pacific, oscillating tropical sea surface temperatures every 2 to 7 years. One cycle brings heavy rains to South America and drought to Australia. The next shifts the pattern. In this undisturbed world, fish stocks surge or recede, seabird colonies expand or contract, and land animals roam in tune with changing resources. Across the Atlantic, The Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation waxes and wanes, subtly tilting hurricane seasons toward or away from landfall without any human legacy of deforestation to amplify the tempest. Volcanoes punctuate these rhythms with fire and ash. When the earth rumbles and belches aerosols into the stratosphere, sunlight dims for seasons or years. This volcanic winter cools summers, shrinks growing seasons, and writes temporary chapters of frost into the record. Yet these eruptions also fertilize soils. Wind-blown ash feeds phytoplankton blooms in iron-starved waters, sparks new forest growth on pumice fields, and adds mineral wealth to floodplain plains. Climate responds in fits and starts, but the absence of carbon-spewing power plants means the planet quickly rebalances once the ash settles. Solar variability adds a gentler tune. 11-year cycles of sunspot activity alter the sun's output by fractions of a percent, nudging Earth's temperature up or down by tenths of a degree. In times of low activity, like the Maunder minimum, cooler conditions prevail in some regions, inviting glaciers to advance marginally. When the sun brightens, summer warmth extends. Across centuries, these wiggles in solar energy subtly shift climate patterns, but the ocean and atmosphere's immense heat reservoirs buffer extremes, forging resilience in ecosystems. Over lengths of time measured in tens of thousands of years, ice ages arrive and retreat under the sway of Milankovitch cycles, tiny oscillations in Earth as orbit and axial tilt that amplify or weaken seasonal contrasts. Glaciers build on high plateaus, carving U-shaped valleys and dumping moraines across lowlands. As ice sheets grow, sea levels fall, exposing continental shelves for migration. When the angles shift, warmth returns. Ice melts, sea levels rise, and coastlines redraw themselves. These glacial-interglacial pulses unfold where no shoreline development has yet to restrain their sprawling movements. Arctic sea ice, free from ships and oil rigs, waxes and wanes in sync with the seasons. In winter, it expands to cloak ocean basins. In summer, it retreats in lacework shapes, feeding algae blooms beneath thin covers. Polar bears patrol these shifting flows, seals haul out on ice rafts, and walruses clamber on drifting debris. Without climate warming accelerated by greenhouse emissions, multi-year ice persists, anchoring ecosystems that have evolved to depend on the reflective albedo of frozen water. Air quality in this pristine world has its own balance. Winds carry dust from deserts to fertilize Amazon soils. Pollen seasons rise and fall in cyclical peaks. Lightning ignites wildfires that drift smoke and ozone aloft. Without smokestacks, the carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides of combustion, air remains clear visibility stretching hundreds of kilometers. Each star a diamond in an unobstructed sky. Ozone forms in the stratosphere by natural ultraviolet splitting, protecting life below, while ground-level ozone appears only in summer storms where lightning and organic precursors combine. Carbon cycles through atmosphere, land, and sea in natural loops. Oceans absorb carbon dioxide in sunlight and release it in darkness. Marine organisms skeletonize in carbonate shells, sinking to the depths as sediments. On land, forests breathe in carbon during photosynthesis and release it when leaves decay. Peat bogs lock it away for millennia. Grassland root networks store it deep underground. Fungi and microbes recycle dead organic matter, sculpting soil and regulating nutrient flows. No land use changes disturb this cycle. Vegetation follows warming or cooling climate belts, migrating across continents in patterns of gradual advance and retreat. Storms gather momentum over warm oceans, fueled by heat stored in vast water columns. Tropical cyclones spin into being where trade winds converge. Without diminishing heat from industrial warming, their intensity remains tethered to subtle variations in sea surface temperatures. Hurricanes track seasonal corridors, their rain nourishing floodplain forests and carving new channels through deltas. In temperate seas, Winter storms lash coasts, shaping dunes and reshaping estuaries. Powerful reminders that weather, not human structures, dictates shoreline evolution. Fire regimes in grasslands and forests maintain ecological balance. Lightning-ignited fires sweep through savannas and woodlands, clearing undergrowth and releasing nutrients. Grasses flush green after these burns, their evolution honed by fire's regular return. In chaparral ecosystems, dense thickets burn in hot pulses and regenerate from fire-resilient seeds. In boreal forests, spruce stands fall to crown fires every several centuries, shaping mosaic patterns of succession that foster biodiversity. In the absence of fire suppression and land conversion, these rhythms pulse naturally, sculpting resilient landscapes. In the deep ocean, currents and upwelling zones flourish without overfishing. Biological carbon pumps carry organic matter to the abyss, burying carbon for centuries. Hydrothermal vents host chemosynthetic communities, sealed from sunlight and chemical pollution. Migratory whales dive to feed in nutrient-rich zones, then surface in synchronized displays, their carcasses plowing oceans with fecal plumes that fertilize plankton. No sonar arrays disrupt their communication. No shipping noise dulls their songs. The deep sea remains a cradle of biodiversity and a regulator of climate. Permafrost soils breathe a slow, frozen breath. In winter, they lock up moisture and carbon. In summer, meltwater trickles through thawed layers, feeding tundra wetlands. No pipelines puncture them. No roadbeds warm them. Moss and lichen cover insulate the ground, keeping it frozen where it should be. Methane ebbs and flows through natural pathways, rarely erupting in explosive seeps. Arctic wetlands exchange greenhouse gases with the atmosphere in modest pulses set by temperature rather than infrastructure. In every climate zone, from equator to poles, Earth's systems maintain a delicate balance. Natural variability spices stability with unpredictability. Volcanic winters, dust storms, mega-droughts, ice surges, but ecosystems adapt. Life thrives on the margins of extremes. Plants evolve drought resistance or flood tolerance. Animals develop migratory routes to chase resources across continents. Without human influence, biodiversity weaves a tapestry of interdependence sustained by climate's steady hand. Yet even untouched systems are not immovable. On geological time, plate tectonics rearrange continents, reshape ocean basins, and reconfigure currents. Mountains spring from subduction zones, altering wind patterns and rain shadows. Sea floor spreading widens oceans, altering the balance of land and sea. These changes unfold so slowly, they escape human measure, but drive life's grand trajectories. In this planet unscarred by industry, stability is dynamic. Shifts in climate belts chase northward as ice retreats, then recede with glacial onset. El Niño arrives unpredictably, then fades into La Nina's chill. Volcanoes awaken and sleep. Solar output waxes and wanes. Yet the Earth's system's air, sea, land have ancient memory. They absorb shocks, echo responses, and return to equilibrium over decades and centuries, sculpting a world of resilience. Standing at the edge of a pristine forest, you breathe air scented only by pine and peat. You watch glaciers calve into turquoise lakes, rivers braid freely across gravel beds, and ocean waves lap unpolluted shores. You listen to thunderstorms roll in crescendo over empty plains, feel monsoon winds usher in life's deluge, and witness coral reefs pulse in sunlit shallows. In this living laboratory, climate, air, and oceans exist in perfect balance, unyielding to human influence, beholden only to the forces of nature. Here, on a planet in balance, the pulse of Earth beats steadily, an unbroken symphony of wind, wave, and weather, played on the world's grandest stage. Imagine standing on a windswept promontory, where granite cliffs plunge into a sea so clear you can watch sunlight dance across polished stones 100 feet below. There is no distant rumble of engines, no contrails streaking the sky, no hum of electricity. In every direction, the land rolls on in unbroken green forests, meadows, wetlands, deserts each, woven into the next by hidden threads of rivers, soil, and sky. Underfoot, ancient lichens cling to rock, and the air carries the tang of salt, pine, and the faint, bright promise of spring. This is an earth untouched by our hand, a world that evolved on its own, shaped only by the slow pulse of tectonic drift, the lash of wind and rain, the push of ice, and the fire writhing beneath its skin. It is a world both familiar and strange, as though you had awakened in a dream woven from every story ever told of wilderness. In that dream, glaciers carve valleys higher than any cathedral monuments in ice, whose slow tributaries linger through centuries, grinding rock into the soil that nourishes tomorrow's forests. Volcanoes breathe fire into the night sky, forging cinder cones and fertile soils in the same breath, their ash-nourishing cicada broods and germinating fern forests long after the red glow fades. Rivers braid across floodplains as freely as lightning across summer clouds, each bend an open invitation to salmon, herons, otters, and the bear that fishes at dawn. Deserts bloom in brief, electric flashes when winter rains fall, strewing the sand with blooms of desert lily and dancing butterflies before the heat returns to reclaim the land. Tundra and taiga meet at the horizon in a quiet handshake of moss and spruce, while in the tropics, emergent trees pierce the sky in a cathedral of leaves where monkeys chatter and orchids drape themselves like living jewels. Without cities or farms, the oceans stretch dark and unscarred, alive with endless shoals of fish that glitter like spun silver in the morning sun. Coral reefs rise and submerge cities of color purples, pinks, yellows, as vast and intricate as any metropolis we have ever built. Whales and dolphins sound songs that travel thousands of miles, carrying messages between pods in pristine waters. Sharks glide as ancient shadows, top predators shaping every food chain without human nets to deplete their ranks. In this world, the wind's kiss over open water churns up nutrients in swirling eddies, fueling plankton blooms that sustain the entire ocean tapestry. Above it all, the sky remains a boundless dome of cobalt daytime and diamond-flooded night, untainted by light pollution. Birds wheel in spirals on thermal currents, raptors scanning for small mammals in fields of grass that stretch unbroken to the horizon. Migrations pulse across seasons as musical threads geese honking in V formations, butterflies winging over mountain passes, bats spiraling beneath a vault of stars, each chorus timed precisely to rains and blooms, to river rhythms and the tilt of Earth's axis. Yet this haunting beauty is also a mirror held to our own world, a world we have altered in mere centuries, reshaping coastlines, rerouting rivers, fragmenting forests, and pumping carbon into the air faster than forests can sequester it. In this mirror, we glimpse both the promise and the peril of our place on Earth. The planet that could have been, unscarred and unclaimed, teaches us that life flourishes only when we listen to the voices of wind, water, and wing. It reminds us that every species, from the smallest soil microbe to the largest, elephant plays a vital note in the grand symphony of ecosystems. When one voice is silenced, the chord grows thin and the melody falters. We see that forests, if left to their own devices, grow great enough to shape weather patterns, drawing rain inland and cooling the land with the breath of leaves. That wetlands, when spared from drainage, filter water, store floods, and cradle young fish that feed millions of mouths downriver. That grasslands, free of fences, store carbon in deep root systems, support migrating herds of bison and antelope, and resist desertification when cycles of grazing and fire remain uninterrupted. That coral reefs, untrammeled by pollution, stand as bulwarks against storm surges, nurseries for fish, and living barometers of ocean health. But the mirror does not merely reflect paradise lost. It pulses with a subtle warning. Even in this humanless vision, Earth systems are not static. They ebb and flow with ice ages, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts, and solar cycles. Life endures through change, but it thrives only when change unfolds at the tempo of evolution and geologic time. Our greatest gift and greatest threat is that we can accelerate change, redirect rivers, clear forests, heat the atmosphere faster than ecosystems can adapt. In doing so, we risk fracturing the very loops of feedback that have kept Earth habitable for eons. Herein lies the lesson of this imagined world, that our stewardship must be humble, grounded in the knowledge that we are one species among millions, depending on the health of forests, rivers, oceans, soils, and skies. It calls us to rewild our rivers, remove dams that choke migratory fish, and floodplain forests, to protect and restore tidal marshes, mangroves, and wetlands that buffer storm surges and filter water, to manage forests not for relentless harvest, but for resilience, allowing natural fires to renew growth, erratic winds to topple trees that feed understory life, and apex predators to roam, keeping herbivores in check, to preserve grasslands under rotating grazing patterns that mimic the migrations of bison, to keep the seas open and alive no-go zones for fishing fleets, corridors for sharks and whales, sanctuaries for corals to regrow in cooler waters. And as we look skyward, we must honor the darkness that enables the nocturnal wonders of owls, bats, and insects, dimly lit pockets of land where wildlife can thrive beyond the glare of our cities. We must curb light pollution, reduce airborne particles that seed or suppress clouds, and limit greenhouse gases that trap heat in the atmosphere. We must temper our appetites for plastic and fertilizer runoff that cloud waters, suffocate corals, and feed toxic algal blooms. Imagine now that mirror cracking in the center, a fissure between the world that could have been and the one we share. It is a call to action etched in every drop of clear water, in every breeze that rustles through ancient pines, in every call of wolves at dusk. The haunting beauty of a humanless Earth is not a refuge from reality, but a torch illuminating the choices before us. It whispers that we need not abandon our homes or our economies to find balance. Rather, we can weave our cities into green corridors, shape our farms into living landscapes, and power our lives with energy that does not scar the sky or starve the soil. The Earth that could have been is a testament to nature's grace, an unguarded portrait of ecosystems honed by eons. Yet it is also a canvas on which we can paint a new future one, where human ingenuity works in concert with natural processes rather than in conflict, where cities breathe with rooftop gardens and tree-lined avenues, where farms rotate crops and graze livestock to build soil, where fisheries harvest no more than the ocean can replenish, where energy comes from wind dancing across dunes and sun pouring through glass, and where waste is a concept as foreign as contrails in an unspoiled sky. As the last stars fade and dawn climbs the mountainside, the world awakens again in light. We carry within us the echo of that humanless realm, its rivers flowing free, its forests unbroken, its oceans teeming undisturbed. Let that echo guide our hands and hearts as we steward the world we have inherited. Let it remind us that our future is not written solely in the lines of concrete and steel we lay down, but in the living landscapes we choose to protect, restore, and cherish. For in protecting the skin of Earth, its soils, waters, forests, and skies, we protect the breath in our lungs, the food on our table, and the wonder in our children's eyes. Only then can we claim, with humble pride, that we have done right by the planet we share and left our own harmonious chapter in Earth as eternal story.